Chapter 204. Senior, it seems that you must fight. Then this junior will be so bold as to ask for your advice. Hai Qinfeng's heart was bursting with arrogance as he thought to himself, since you are a senior, why are you bullying me like this? Where is the demeanor of a senior? I'd rather be beaten to death by you than be scared to death by you. In any case, I, Hai Qinfeng, am the disciple of one of the 8 great masters. When have I ever been afraid of anyone? The Blue Master, Meng Hongchen, was also an eccentric person who never talked to her disciples about the outside world. Hai Qinfeng had never seen Solitary Eagle since he lived outside the Great Wall all year round. Even the rumors about Solitary Eagle were few and far between. So much so that Hai Qinfeng couldn't recognize the man in front of him. He was one of the 8 great masters, the god of the grasslands, Solitary Eagle. Hee, I'm afraid that asking for advice won't be interesting. It's fate that we've met. Today, you will accompany this old man to relax his muscles. The solitary falcon laughed out loud. Then, he suddenly took a few steps forward, and swung his palm downwards. Hai Qinfeng snorted angrily as he unsheathed his sword with a clang. Bang! Solitary Eagle's right hand collided with the sword's edge. The sound of metal clashing rang out as his palm collided with the sword. Hai Qinfeng's heart calmed down. This old man's lightness skill was truly astonishing. In fact, he had never seen anything like this in his life. However, the two of them were evenly matched. Although the opposite party's palm was naturally stronger than his own, but he wasn't that much stronger. Hai Qinfeng didn't necessarily have no chance of winning. He couldn't help but let out a long and loud shout as a blue light surged out from the inside like a surging tide. He didn't know that Solitary Eagle's eyesight was very good. In order to continue fighting like a cornered beast, Solitary Eagle had used the equivalent of his own strength to deal with him. There was a special reason why Solitary Eagle went around looking for people to attack. Over the past few years, he had been spending his time at the peak of the snowy mountain, fighting with the goshawk. Slowly, he had gained some insights, and from the goshawk's flight, fighting, hunting, attack, and evasion, he had created a new set of powerful martial arts from his original 9 forms of the Divine Eagle, Eagle Transformation 17 forms. This set of martial arts was extremely powerful, but because it was only at the beginning, it was far from being fully integrated. The connection between the moves gave Solitary Eagle a huge headache. From time to time, Solitary Eagle wanted to find a good opponent to practice with so that he could discover the flaws of the 17 Eagle transformation forms and find a way to improve it. However, he was never able to find one. One had to know that the other great supremes who were equally as famous as him were not ordinary people. They would either hide their strength and bide their time, or they would be elusive, or they would just reject him outright. Who would have the time to play with him? Moreover, these experts were only slightly inferior to the solitary falcon in terms of Qinggong. However, any one of them was far superior to the solitary falcon in terms of actual strength. Therefore, even if the solitary falcon were to provoke them, it would still be pointless. Thus, Solitary Eagle was really helpless. It wasn't impossible to say that he still had a mortal enemy, Feng Wanyan. However, once the two of them met, it would always be a battle of life and death. If the solitary falcon were to use this incomplete set of 17 Eagle transformation against his opponent in that situation, then it would be no different from courting death. Even if he could protect himself, he would still have to reveal his trump card to Feng Wanyan first. Solitary Eagle was absolutely unwilling. This set of martial arts was originally prepared for when he would defeat Feng Wanyan in the future. How could he reveal it now? But other than that, although the world was big, how many people could be a match for Solitary Eagle? It wasn't that Solitary Eagle didn't think of going to the Tian Fa forest, but when he thought of Tian Fa's heaven-shaking strength, Solitary Eagle hesitated again and again. In the end, he still didn't dare to go. Sending himself to the front door was simply asking to be turned into the feces of Xian beasts. At his wit's end, the solitary falcon came up with an alternative solution: find someone to fight with. No matter who it was, as long as it was a famous expert, even if it was a technique inherited from the ancestors, it would definitely have its own unique way of thinking. And what Solitary Eagle needed was precisely this. Thus, this old eagle, one of the 8 great masters, fought his way from the south to the north, and from the north back to the south. But recently, he discovered something extremely depressing. After fighting with hundreds of so-called experts, not only did his strength not increase, it had actually decreased. Actually, this was not difficult to understand, it was like playing chess with a lousy chessboard. After playing too much chess, one's hand would also become lousy. While he was feeling depressed, he unexpectedly received news about Xian Dan. He had traveled a long way to come here, and had coincidentally caught up with this farce. Now, he could finally let go of his hands and feet and fight a big battle. Just when he was feeling happy, 2 Xian Beast Kings suddenly jumped out of nowhere. And they forcibly snatched Xian Dan in front of everyone's eyes. Needless to say, whether it was Solitary Eagle or Shi Changxiao, the 2 great masters had lost face. Admittedly, Shi Changxiao's trip was in vain. But, Solitary Eagle's thousands of li journey was also in vain. The next day, Solitary Eagle felt that it was unfair. So, he went to Shi Changxiao's door to look for trouble. But, he was told that Shi Changxiao had already left in the night. The extremely depressed Solitary Eagle also decided to leave. As for his original plan to subdue the Jinyang gang, he did not take it to heart. What was the point of subduing the Jinyang gang without any experts? That stupid gang was originally used to search for the whereabouts of Xian Dan. Now that Xian Dan was nowhere to be found, what was the point of that thing? He did not expect to receive a challenge from the Jinyang gang at this time. This was like a pillow when he wanted to doze off. The originally depressed Solitary Eagle finally had a place to vent his anger. He excitedly rushed here to vent his anger. When he saw the person, he was even more overjoyed. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the person in front of him was the disciple of the great Master Azure. Moreover, his cultivation was already at the peak of the middle level of Tianxian. He was really a God-sent man. Solitary Eagle suddenly understood a saying, lose at the swings, but gain at the mulberry. In the midst of disappointment, there was a great favor. Therefore, Solitary Eagle naturally did not want to rashly reveal his identity. If his identity was exposed, this kid in front of him would immediately kneel down and call him martial uncle. But, he would definitely not be able to fight. One must know that stones from other mountains can be used to attack jade. This person was the disciple of the great Master Azure, and his cultivation had already reached the peak of the middle level of Tianxian. He must be the favorite disciple of the great Master Azure. If he could fight to his heart's content, he believed that it would be a great inspiration for him. Therefore, one deliberately suppressed his true strength, while the other fought with all his strength. The 2 of them rolled around, and in the blink of an eye, they had exchanged dozens of moves. One of them was fighting to his heart's content, while the other was fighting more comfortably. Could this be considered as both of them getting what they wanted? At this time, an uninvited guest also arrived. This uninvited guest was naturally Jun Dashao. Although Jun Dashao was an expert in tracking, it also depended on who he was competing with. Solitary Eagle's Qing Gong was second to none among the 8 great masters. Even if the hitman Jun's tracking methods were excellent, it would still be difficult for him to keep track of him. If he hadn't been attracted by the red leaves that covered the sky, then he would have missed him. Jun Dashao's body flickered as he fled nearby, and just happened to see Solitary Eagle acting like a hooligan, an adult bullying a child. He couldn't help but admire him in his heart. He is indeed worthy of being one of the 8 great masters. His methods of acting like a hooligan are simply superb. As he watched the fight between Solitary Eagle and the man in blue, Jun Moxie suddenly discovered a very strange phenomenon. Although the Solitary Falcon was trying his best to make it seem as if he was having a hard time dealing with this situation, but Jun Moxie could see at a glance that Solitary Eagle was using the same moves over and over again, and that he was casually changing them. But the man in blue was undoubtedly going all out. The battle situation was completely under the control of Solitary Eagle. This situation was more like Solitary Eagle was using the man in blue to practice his martial arts. Solitary Eagle's upper body didn't move, and his lower body didn't move. His hands were either stretched or retracted, or bent or straight, and his palms, claws, and fingers were changing back and forth. Jun Moxie stared for a long time, and the more he looked, the more he felt that something was wrong. Suddenly, his heart lit up. Solitary Eagle had clearly created his own martial arts. And this martial art had evolved from Goshawk's body. This point was very obvious, but what was even more obvious was that although he had created this martial art, it was far from forming a relatively complete system. This could be seen from the connection between the moves. It was obvious that this martial art required a set of specialized circulation paths to support it. Moreover, every move and every style was very strange. It could be seen that if one exerted his full strength, the power would be very great. Jun Moxie silently counted 3 times, and finally determined that this set of moves should have a total of 17 moves. Due to the interruption of Solitary Eagle's moves, it could be clearly calculated. Although it was easy to determine that these moves of Solitary Eagle were extremely powerful, but because he didn't have any killing intent in his heart, and because he deliberately suppressed his true strength, the power he displayed was mediocre. If he were to fight against an expert of the same level, he would have already been overwhelmed. But if he were to deal with someone of a lower realm than him, he would be able to handle it with ease, and even if there were occasional flaws, he would be able to make up for it. In addition, according to Hitman Jun's experience and accurate analysis, if he could combine a few of these moves at the same time, the power would increase by several times. But now, it was clear that Solitary Eagle couldn't do it. Although he had a flash of inspiration, and had created these moves, but he was far from being able to display the true power of these moves. Jun Moxie suddenly understood why Solitary Eagle didn't want to stay in Xiandan, but instead traveled thousands of miles to Tianxiang City. Why did Solitary Eagle want to fight so much? Why did Solitary Eagle want to fight against an expert of such a high level? So this was the reason. In that case, why don't I do the same? Jun Moxie nervously pondered as he watched Solitary Eagle's movements. Jun Xia felt a vague sense of familiarity as he looked at the Solitary Falcon's every move and every stance of his. Shaky, too shaky. It could be said that these powerful moves in Solitary Eagle's hands could at best be called the 17 moves of Sanshou. They still needed to be tempered 1,000 times, and couldn't be called a systematic set of martial arts. But in terms of the embryonic form of a unique skill, it was more than enough. Most of Solitary Eagle's moves were similar to the Eagle's snake life and death style. Wing spread style, rising eagle style, rushing heaven style, fighting rabbit style, and I know all of these. Moreover, the Solitary Falcon was far from being able to achieve such a level of mastery, and had studied it in a very systematic manner. Moreover, all of these moves had been thoroughly tempered, and had been thoroughly tempered for a long time. Ha ha ha. Chapter 205. Jun Xia silently compared the Solitary Falcon's moves, and was surprised to find that although the Solitary Falcon's moves were a bit jerky, and even incoherent, but the finesse of his moves might not be as good as some of the superior martial arts from his previous life, but the fierceness of his moves was far superior. If matched with the corresponding Xian Qi, it would be enough to display a considerable amount of power, and even Jun Moxie would have to admire it. What was even more rare was that every time Solitary Eagle repeated the same moves in the process of fighting, there would be subtle changes, and the flaws in the original moves would be eliminated bit by bit. So that the flaws in the moves that should have taken a long time to be eliminated, were quickly solved in actual combat. One must know that the concept of learning martial arts and the concept of creating a martial art are completely different. The creation of a martial art, from the initial stage, to the initial stage, to the final stage, and then to the final stage, can never be skipped. In order to achieve the final stage, apart from the creator's flash of inspiration, it would also take decades, or even generations of painstaking effort, to truly temper and perfect it. In this strange world where there was no Chinese ancient martial arts, Solitary Eagle was able to ingeniously abandon the original Xian Qi, and create a new set of martial arts moves. Moreover, he was able to use his own unique method to quickly form this set of martial arts. His wisdom and pursuit of martial arts were enough to be praised by future generations, and the creation of a new set of martial arts could be regarded as an epic-making achievement. Just from this point alone, Solitary Eagle was already worthy of the title of 8 Great Masters, and had the qualifications to be a great master of his generation. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that he was willing to lower his status as one of the 8 Great Masters, and did not hesitate to lower his status to fight with ordinary Xian Qi experts, in order to verify the flaws in his moves, and then improve upon them. This kind of rigorous attitude towards martial arts was something that not many people could do. Wait a minute. A light suddenly flashed in Jun Moxie's mind. Solitary Eagle wanted to find an opponent, but couldn't find one. Shuihan Manor and the Silver Blizzard City, weren't they good opponents? Right now, Solitary Eagle was having a headache over the fact that it was difficult for his moves to match his cultivation. Didn't he have the ultimate moves from his previous life in his mind? Divine Eagle pouncing on the tiger, Eagle cries to the 9 provinces, Eagle 9 transformations, Eagle soaring 1,000 miles. Wouldn't it be a waste if he didn't make use of the resources he had? That would truly be a reckless waste of God's gifts. Jun Moxie thought nervously in his mind. For a moment, he was pleasantly surprised. Solitary Eagle used his palms to control the balance of the entire situation, but in his mind, he was thinking about how to coordinate his hands and feet, and how to link his moves with each other, slowly familiarizing himself with the moves, and then slowly improving them bit by bit, although the process was extremely slow, but it was still very enjoyable. This world's Xian Qi was different from the internal energy that Jun Dashao was familiar with in his previous life. Xian Qi itself was too strong, and lacked the characteristics of the internal energy of the Xian Qi, which limited the display of the moves, so the majority of the moves were based on brute force, and the average person's Xian Qi was rarely able to make a complex move, unless it was a very powerful and deadly move, but once that kind of move was launched, the Xian Qi of the entire body would basically be gone. In this regard, it was very similar to the so-called Do Qi. If one pursued the power and speed of the moves, then the Xian Qi would not be able to keep up. If one pursued the quality of the Xian Qi, then the moves would appear cumbersome. However, Solitary Eagle's current moves, although still very shaky, had basically transcended the scope of this aspect, and had corrected the shortcomings. Moreover, there was already a gradual trend of integration. However, this was truly a groundbreaking feat. If Solitary Eagle could really perfect this set of martial arts to the point of perfection, then Solitary Eagle would truly be the founder of a generation's great master sect. In fact, he would even be a peerless great master sect. Hai Chunfeng's complexion was unusually calm, and his sword was like the wind, circling, chopping, thrusting, slashing. The blue light ocean's billowing sword technique had been passed down to him by the great master Blue to the fullest, and had even managed to gain the upper hand at the beginning of the fight, and had even managed to suppress the black-clothed man for a time. However, the black-clothed man was able to stand firm from beginning to end, and no matter how many attacks were launched, he would still stand tall like a mountain. Sometimes, he could clearly see the flaws of his opponent's moves, and it seemed as if he could pierce a hole in his opponent's body with his sword, but he didn't know how he was able to resolve them in a strange manner. With the passage of time, Hai Chunfeng became aware that the great advantage he had previously held was gradually shrinking. His opponent was still using the same moves he had used a moment ago, but its flaws were becoming increasingly difficult to find. Occasionally, his opponent would launch a strange counterattack which would force him into a flustered state. The situation between the two sides had been completely reversed by the time the battle had reached its climax. Hai Chunfeng was still fully focused, and was going all out. His whole body was drenched in sweat, and his breathing was somewhat unstable. On the other hand, his opponent's breathing was still as steady as before, and his moves were constantly changing, becoming unconstrained and unrestrained. Hai Chunfeng was forced to retreat as soon as he made his move, but the black-clothed man didn't seem to have any intention of pursuing him, otherwise, Hai Chunfeng would have already died 8 times over. The competition between the two experts was getting more and more dangerous. The concept of a dangerous battle and the concept of an intense battle were completely different. An intense battle was generally when the strength of the two sides was roughly equal, and both sides were going all out in this contest. Only when the two sides were at the final juncture would they be able to sustain injuries or even perish together. Generally speaking, the probability of such a situation occurring was very small, and both sides would stop before their energy was exhausted. However, the concept of a dangerous battle was completely different. The weaker side could easily face a fatal disaster, and Hai Qinfeng's current situation was exactly like this. Originally, Solitary Eagle was the great master Shen Xian, and was the one who was in charge of the overall situation. So, it was impossible for Hai Qinfeng to sustain any injuries. However, Solitary Eagle had been concentrating on his own 17 techniques of Sanzhou, and had entered into a godly state. Therefore, his fight with Hai Qinfeng had turned into an instinctive one. Although Solitary Eagle's Xian Qi was still controlled to the same level as Hai Qinfeng's, but this was still the great master Shen Xian's control ability. How could Hai Qinfeng compare? Although he wouldn't be able to seriously injure Hai Qinfeng in the blink of an eye, but he could easily nullify Hai Qinfeng's myriad of moves with just a casual wave of his hand. The true disparity between the two of them was clearly revealed. Hai Qinfeng knew that there was no room for a fluke. His opponent had been toying with him from the beginning to the end, and the outcome of this battle was completely under his control. That being the case, I will give you a heavy lesson even if I have to risk my life. Hai Qinfeng was a master of the Tianxian clan, and had rarely met a worthy opponent. So, he had his own pride and self-respect. However, Solitary Eagle's attitude of toying with him was undoubtedly a great humiliation for Hai Qinfeng. In fact, this humiliation was something that he couldn't wash away. Hai Qinfeng had the strength to defeat his opponent, but he had deliberately kept him in suspense. It was like an old cat playing with a mouse. He would get bored of playing with him, and then kill him. It was like playing chess. One could obviously kill his opponent in one move, but he would drag it out, and wouldn't allow his opponent to admit defeat. Instead, he would kill his opponent and leave no one alive. Then, he would send a large army of chariots, horses, and cannons to encircle the enemy's old commander. You'll die of exhaustion. This kind of prank could be used against a novice, but what if it was used against a famous chess master? It would be strange if the enemy didn't get angry on the spot. Hai Qinfeng was like an old commander at the end of his road. However, this old commander still had a final trick up his sleeves, and would destroy everything indiscriminately. Hai Qinfeng suddenly let out a shrill cry, and withdrew his sword. Then, he suddenly started to circle around Solitary Eagle like a hurricane, and the blue light around his body became more and more intense. The blue light around his body became more intense every time he circled around. It went from sky blue, to dark blue, to dark blue, and finally, to dark blue. It seemed as if a small tornado was wreaking havoc in the entire circle. The layers of blue light had completely condensed into a substantial substance. Solitary Eagle felt that he had gained a lot of insight, and was quite pleased in his heart. Therefore, he became even more attentive to his moves. Suddenly, he felt that the pressure around him had increased, and he was no longer able to do as he pleased. Instead, it seemed as if the surrounding tide had suddenly risen, and was accompanied by a violent gale and torrential rain. The endless surging pressure engulfed him. His heart was suddenly startled, and he immediately recalled the Azure Master's signature skill, Heaven and Earth Wave. This was a move that would destroy everything indiscriminately, and bring the enemy down with him. This move would burn the Xian Qi of one's entire body, along with the potential of one's Dantian, and all the strength of one's body. This move would then transform into the most powerful and lethal force, and then burst out in one move. Once this move was used, it could at least raise the level of the user's Xian Qi by more than 2 levels in an instant. Moreover, it would be able to erupt with energy far beyond one's own strength, and would definitely be able to kill an enemy whose strength was originally 2 levels higher than one's own. However, there was a huge disadvantage to using this move, and that was that one would die regardless of the enemy's strength. He wouldn't injure the enemy, but he would injure himself first. So, he would be doomed regardless of whether or not he could defeat the enemy. Solitary Eagle was shocked and cursed, "You bastard! You're courting death. I'm your eagle." He wanted to say, I'm your Uncle Eagle. But, he hadn't finished speaking when Hai Chen Feng burst into laughter, and interrupted Solitary Eagle's unfinished words. Then, he roared in grief and indignation, "Old thief, are you still afraid now that you know? You dare to humiliate my Azure Master? Hand over your life." The long sword bounced up with a whang sound, and rose up like a raging flood dragon. It was accompanied by monstrous waves, and the sword's sound changed midway. It sounded like the angry roar of a flood dragon on the verge of death. The sword light was swift, and the entire sky was filled with the sound of wind and thunder. Suddenly, a white light flashed, and an explosive "kacha" sound was heard. It was as if a thunderbolt had struck from a clear sky, and the Milky Way had suddenly burst its banks. It was brimming with a resolute and unwavering momentum, and came crashing down with a loud bang. It pounced toward Solitary Eagle. Solitary Eagle was angry and anxious at the same time. He was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He flew into a rage and cursed, "You little bastard. Quickly stop. I'm going to settle the score with Meng Hongchen tomorrow. I'll fuck your uncle. How did a lunatic like you appear? I've been merciful all this time, haven't you realized it? You're an idiot and a lunatic." Chapter 206. Would Solitary Eagle be afraid of Hai Chen Feng's ultimate move? The answer was obviously no. How could the Solitary Falcon, who was also a Spirit Xian expert, be shaken by the Azure Master's display of this technique? The gap between Hai Chen Feng and Solitary Eagle's cultivation was so huge that a mere sweeping heaven and earth wave wouldn't be able to shorten it. Let alone perishing together, it wouldn't even be able to injure the Solitary Eagle. But the great Shen Xian's Solitary Eagle wouldn't be in any danger. Solitary Eagle could only think of, "I'm done for. I've only cared about my own happiness, and focused on practicing a few moves, but I've inadvertently forced this kid into a dead end. How am I going to explain this to Meng Hongchen when I see her in the future? Tell her that I've forced her disciple to his death because of my own cultivation? What kind of person would that make me? Meng Hongchen wouldn't fight me to the death. But, what should I do now?" Hai Chen Feng had heard Solitary Eagle's words, and was so angry that he almost exploded in the air. "You old bastard, you should have told me earlier. Why are you acting so mysterious? Your nephew has already burned all of his Xian Qi and energy, and is like an arrow on a bowstring, and has no choice but to fire. He can't stop even if he wants to. He's dead." At this moment, Hai Chen Feng felt that he was the most wronged person in the world. He was definitely more wronged than Do Yi, if Do Yi existed in this world. Fight with the Solitary Falcon, who is as famous as my master, and burn both jade and stone together. What kind of bastard is this? Why didn't you show that you're the great Shen Xian earlier? Even if I didn't recognize you as my master, I would have run away a long time ago. I'm too talented to talk about dignity with the great Shen Xian. Now, I'm sure that this move of mine won't have any effect on you, but I'm doomed to die. Hai Chen Feng thought sadly, but thinking was just thinking, cursing was just cursing. This move, sweeping heaven and earth, was absolutely impossible to stop. The Solitary Falcon was extremely gloomy and angry, and Hai Chen Feng was extremely resentful and indignant, while the heaven and earth were being swept away. The immense power was already upon Solitary Eagle's head. Solitary Eagle's eyes were filled with helplessness. He was so anxious that he was about to foam at the mouth. It was really over this time. What to do? Let's dissolve it. At the very least, we can leave this kid's corpse intact. Bang bang, boom. Dust filled the air, and one could not even see their fingers in front of them, nor could they see the blue sky when they looked up. The Solitary Eagle stood tall and proud, while Hai Chen Feng flew far away like a kite with a broken string. When the dust settled, Solitary Eagle stood in the middle of the field, looking at his own hands with a sorrowful expression. He felt sorrow welling up in his heart, and he almost burst into tears. What was going on? Hai Chen Feng's face was as white as a sheet of paper, and he was lying on the ground. There was blood at the corner of his mouth, and his chest was moving up and down slightly. Anyone could tell that this man was on his last breath, and that there was no way to bring him back to life. Hai Qinfeng's expression was very strange. It looked like he was crying, but it also looked like he was smiling. This was a very strange expression for a dying man. In fact, Hai Qinfeng didn't even have the strength to move his fingers, and could only wait for his death. As long as they had the slightest bit of strength, as long as they could open their mouths, they would first laugh at themselves before cursing out loud. Since ancient times, there have been countless Tianxian experts, but which one of them died in such a sullen manner like me? Why am I being wronged? Why am I being left speechless? Time? Luck? Nonsense. This is life. It's a bitter life. Hai Qinfeng's situation was because Solitary Eagle had tried his best to restrain himself, and had only been able to protect himself, and had barely managed to achieve this result. Otherwise, with his power as a supreme martial artist, if he were to counterattack with all his might, the stronger he was, the weaker 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 he was. It's over. Solitary Eagle covered his face with his hands. He didn't need to look to know what Hai Qinfeng looked like. There was absolutely no hope left for him. I'm really unlucky. I can't believe this kind of thing happened to me. I don't know if my luck is too good or too bad. How can I meet old Meng in the future? What will I say when I see him? Oh heaven, oh earth, why is my life so bitter? Holding on to a sliver of hope, the Eagle Great Sovereign went over to take a look, and his face immediately darkened. He couldn't help but stand up and tear 2 handfuls of his hair. He was so anxious that he spun around and kicked a big tree far away with a bang. Haha, he was fighting with his nephew, but he actually forced him to die. No, he should be playing with him to death, or training him to death. A leisurely voice suddenly rang out, and had a hint of mockery in it. Regardless of which one it is, he's worthy of being called a great master. He's really fierce, I admire him. Solitary Eagle was so depressed that he was about to go crazy. So, he became furious when he heard these words. He suddenly turned around, and cursed in a flustered and exasperated manner, "Motherfucker, which son of a bitch is it? Come out. Shi Changshao, is that you? You old green-haired turtle." In Solitary Eagle's mind, there was only one person in the entire Tianxiang city who could sneak up on him without him noticing, and that person was the great master of life and death, Shi Changshao. Didn't he go away? Why is he still here? He even saw me make a fool of myself. There was no sound in the air, and the solitary falcon was furious. He was just about to start cursing when his vision suddenly darkened, and he discovered something extremely shocking. He didn't know when a black-clothed and masked man had crouched down in front of him, and was holding Hai Qinfeng's pulse with one hand. His eyes were closed, and he was less than 3 feet away from Solitary Eagle. Solitary Eagle was about to say something, but he forcibly swallowed it back into his stomach. The solitary falcon had always been very conceited, whether it was his own strength, or the fact that he had the qualifications to create his own sect in the future. However, he had always been proud of the fact that he was unrivaled in the world, and had always been superior to the other 7 great masters in terms of agility. Solitary Eagle's agility skills were second to none among the great masters, and this was also recognized by all the other great masters. Even the head of the great masters, Yunbi Chen, wouldn't be able to sneak up to such a close distance without being detected by Solitary Eagle. So, who is this black-clothed and masked man? Solitary Eagle's hair stood on end in a split second. 3 feet away. Oh my God! Is this man the incarnation of a ghost? Since the intruder could come here without a sound, wouldn't it be as easy as eating cabbages to deal with him? When did such a powerful expert appear in this world? This move is very ruthless. He actually shattered his own dantian in order to stimulate his life's potential. It's really ruthless. It's a pity that the stone is burnt, but the jade is completely fine. The black-clothed man sighed. This boy has a strong temperament, and I like it. If I hadn't come a step earlier, wouldn't you have toyed with this nephew of yours to death? This brother, you mean, he can still be saved. Solitary Eagle was overjoyed when he heard this, and stuttered as he asked. He's not dead yet. With this old man here, even if he wants to die, he can't. The black-clothed man rolled his eyes. Don't make a sound. Just stand aside. Several dense black lines appeared on the solitary falcon's forehead at this point. In the vast universe, in the entire continent, who would dare to speak to him like this? Or rather, who would dare to speak to him like this after knowing his identity? He was about to explode. What are you doing here? The black-clothed man was not polite at all. You're disturbing me, and then you want your nephew to die. Hurry up and get away from this old man. If you continue to be a hindrance, this old man will leave you alone. Solitary Eagle's old face was red like a cooked eagle's butt. He did not say a word, and walked away a few steps. He then said, if you can't cure him, this old man will make you pay with your life. Oh? You dare to threaten this old man? How dare you? The black-clothed man slowly stood up. This old man will not cure him. He stood there with his arms crossed, and looked at Solitary Eagle with contempt. You want me to pay with my life? Come on. This old man wants to see what kind of ability you have to make this old man pay with his life. Do you think you're really invincible just because you're called one of the 8 great masters? I'll spit on your face. Solitary Eagle's eyes almost popped out of his head in anger, and his chest heaved up and down. He was so angry that he was on the verge of bursting and spitting out blood. This is too infuriating. Solitary Eagle almost wanted to roar, this old man will fight with you. However, he still felt that it would be best to save Hai Chen-Feng's life if he could do so. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to raise his head among the 8 great masters if word got out that he had forced a junior to his death. So, he had to endure this for now. What do you want? Solitary Eagle forcibly suppressed his temper. Hurry up and save him. Fuck. You're still dawdling. Hai Chen-Feng's breathing was getting weaker and weaker, and Solitary Eagle stared at him with a pleading look in his eyes. Beg me. The black-clothed masked man calmly crossed his arms. Beg me to save him, and I'll save him. I wanted to save him because this kid is pleasing to the eye, but I don't like you now, so I won't save him. Beg. Solitary Eagle almost choked on his breath. This was the first time in his life that he had spoken in such a submissive tone, and this guy was actually asking him to beg him. This was simply stepping on my face, and taking a mile after taking an inch. The black-clothed masked man snorted, and turned around to walk away, without the slightest reluctance. Wait! Solitary Eagle was sweating profusely as he shouted in a hoarse voice. Hai Chen-Feng's death was something that Solitary Eagle felt guilty about, even if it wasn't for the sake of the Azure Master. Therefore, he couldn't allow Hai Chen-Feng to die. This old man, begs you. Solitary Eagle clenched his teeth, and the muscles on his cheeks twitched as he glared at the masked man. It seemed as if he wanted to eat him alive. Even the waters of 3 rivers and 5 lakes wouldn't be able to wash away the shame on his face today. I'm done for. I've thrown away all my face today. Lin Fan thought to himself. The black-clothed masked man snorted, and looked at him in an evil manner as he pointed at him and said, Look at you, ah. You're a typical mule. You can't pull me away, and you're rushing me back. Why would I come out if I didn't want to save him? Do you think that you're very handsome just because you have the title of a great master? I'm trying to save him, and you want me to pay with my life? Is your brain filled with tofu dregs? Did the water get in? Chapter 207. Solitary Eagle's mind was crooked. Out of sight, out of mind, he turned around and gave the back of his head to the masked man. Just because of a few eagle fighting moves, I've actually become possessed to such an extent. Do you really think I'll be able to reach the level of a grandmaster just by looking for some shrimps to practice every day? The masked man muttered to himself, only 17 moves in total, and they're not even continuous. It's really sad and shameful. I can't believe I still have the nerve to call myself one of the 8 great masters. This is too shameful. Upon hearing this, Solitary Eagle turned around like a whirlwind. His eagle eyes shone brightly. Your Excellency, what did you just say? What did I say? I said you don't know how to practice martial arts. The masked man rolled his eyes, the so-called hundreds of birds flapping their wings, eagles soaring through the sky, moving unhindered between the heavens and the earth, with thousands of changes. How could your puny moves be able to summarize them? You haven't completely figured them out. You only know half of them. You tried to imitate an eagle, but you ended up imitating a fly. Naturally, you couldn't bring out its true power. And you, for such a plaything, actually ended up in such a sorry state. Isn't that both pitiful and laughable? Don't you think you're a disgrace? This time, the black masked man's tone was even more vile than before, but every word and sentence that he had spoken had a heavy impact on the solitary falcon's heart. However, the solitary falcon wasn't in the mood to refute the man's words at this time. Instead, he felt as if a big and delicious pie had fallen from the sky, and had smashed into his head and made him dizzy. Senior, please advise me. Solitary Eagle said respectfully. In his mind, if someone who could point out his shortcomings wasn't a senior, then who could it be? It could only be a senior expert. At this moment, Solitary Eagle completely put away his arrogance. Go to the side and cool down first. When I'm done saving him, I'll give you a few pointers. Then, I'll tell you that your little tricks aren't worth mentioning. The masked man snorted and said indifferently. Yes. The solitary falcon sat down, and then started to look around for any movement, and started to act as a protector for Jun Emosia. The black-clothed masked man squatted down in a calm and unruffled manner, and groaned in extreme comfort. He then grabbed Hai Chen Feng's wrist, and closed his eyes to meditate. The 8 Great Supremes. Who would dare to lecture them as if they were their grandchildren? Humph, I dare. After teaching them a lesson, they still have to respect me. What is an expert? I am an expert. The masked man in black was none other than Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao. It could be said that Hai Chen Feng's injuries were indeed very serious. In fact, it could be said that there was no cure for his injuries in this world. However, Jun Moxie's art of unlocking the heavens' fortune was far less serious than Jun Wui's. Hai Chen Feng's injuries were still fresh. Moreover, most of them were internal injuries. Therefore, they were much easier to treat than Jun Wuyi's chronic illness. Of course, if Jun Moxie hadn't acted, then even the 8 Great Supremes wouldn't have been able to kill him. Jun Emosia started the Hong Jun Pagoda in a familiar manner. A rich aura gushed out of the pagoda, and flowed into Hai Chen Feng's meridians through his palms. Bit by bit, it repaired his broken meridians, reconnected his Xian Qi, and slowly nourished his damaged Dantian. Hai Chen Feng's deathly pale face slowly regained some color. He groaned in a low voice. He opened his eyes weakly, and looked at the black-masked man in front of him. His eyes were full of heartfelt gratitude. This gratitude wasn't entirely due to the fact that he had saved his life. Instead, it was due to the fact that this senior had given Solitary Eagle a good beating. Hai Chen Feng was on the verge of death, but he still felt very comfortable. Retribution. It's a pity that I won't get the chance to do so in this lifetime. At this moment, he felt an abundant and continuous mighty force slowly surging into his meridians. The meridians that had lost all their functions and were almost broken actually glowed with vitality in an instant. Even his own master, Azure Supremacy, didn't have this kind of vigorous energy. This was simply a miracle. Hai Chen Feng looked at Jun Moxie. His expression changed from one of gratitude to one of worship. I don't know who this senior is. He's a Xian expert, but he's been able to cultivate to such an extent. It's very respectable. Hearing Hai Chen Feng's groan, Solitary Eagle turned around in surprise, and opened his eyes wide. Exploding one's Dantian, incinerating one's entire body's essence, qi, and spirit into a single blow. This kind of indiscriminate destruction was a fatal injury in the Xian continent. However, Hai Chen Feng's breathing was becoming more and more stable in front of Solitary Eagle. Anyone who wasn't blind would be able to see that Hai Chen-feng's injuries were still very serious, but his life was no longer in danger. Moreover, he was progressing in an ideal direction. He believed that it wouldn't be long before he could regain his lost cultivation if he were to progress at his current pace. There's actually such a top-notch cultivation technique in this world. Solitary Eagle could clearly feel the terrifying strength of this black-clothed masked man from the frightening fluctuations in the air. Even though he was one of the 8 great masters, he couldn't help but secretly smack his lips. It's fortunate that I didn't act impulsively. Otherwise, wouldn't I have ended up lying on the ground like Hai Chen-feng? I'm so lucky. Solitary Eagle had always been daring. However, he couldn't help but break into a cold sweat at this moment. It's too amazing. I'm afraid that even Yun Bichen doesn't have such terrifying strength, right? Solitary Eagle recalled his previous encounter with Yun Bichen, and made a comparison in his mind. The result of the comparison nearly made Solitary Eagle cry out in alarm. He could clearly tell that Yun Bichen's strength at that time couldn't be compared to this black-clothed masked man's aura. Even if the disparity wasn't as great as that of a small stream compared to the sea, it was still as great as that of a river compared to the ocean. He believed that even if Yun Bichen had improved over the years, he wouldn't be able to reach the level of this black-clothed masked man. Cold sweat trickled down Solitary Eagle's forehead. The solitary falcon was shocked, and Hai Chen-feng was full of admiration. However, these two were completely unaware of the fact that the young Master Jun was in a very dangerous situation at the moment. The spiritual qi was surging violently in Hai Chen-feng's meridians. However, the spiritual qi was surging crazily at the same time. At the same time, a loud explosion sounded in his mind, and he felt dizzy for a moment. He felt as if he was in a void, and his intuition told him that he couldn't go up to the sky, and couldn't go down to the ground. He felt as if he was the only person in this world. Suddenly, a feeling of emptiness and loneliness arose in his heart. The qi in his meridians seemed to have come alive, and started to circulate like a raging tide. It was like the waves of the sea, and the waves of the Yangtze River. Each wave was stronger, more ferocious, and more menacing than the last. Jun Moxie cried out in his heart. He had been looking forward to making a breakthrough for more than a month. He had rushed to make a breakthrough, and now he was on the verge of making a breakthrough at such a critical juncture. The Hongjun Pagoda flew up on its own, and emitted thousands of rays of light. It was so bright that it couldn't be looked at directly. An enormous suction force enveloped Jun Imo Xie's spiritual sense, and started to pull at it fiercely. The young Master Jun had already experienced this once, so he knew what this meant. So, he withdrew his spiritual power with a schwa sound. Hai Chen-feng's body shook, and blood spilled from the corners of his mouth. Solitary Eagle felt the abnormality in the atmosphere, and opened his eyes in astonishment. Jun Moxie was barely able to restrain himself, and slowly said, "I have stabilized his injuries. There is no danger to his life for the time being, but he will need to undergo several treatments if he wants to make a full recovery. However, I have something urgent to attend to at the moment." This. Solitary Eagle raised his eyebrows, and a look of doubt appeared in his eyes. "Eagle, you take him to the Jun family's residence in Tianxiang City, and look for my disciple, the Jun family's third young master, Jun Moxie. Let him take care of this brat. He has already received my teachings, and this kind of injury won't pose a problem for him, even though his cultivation is still shallow. This brat will recover in 3 months at most." Solitary Eagle nodded. "As for you, I've already taught Jun Imo Xie everything related to your moves. If you want to complete your goshawk's move, you'll have to find him. This old man has no interest in wasting time with you. His temperament isn't as good as mine, so you will have to endure it if you want to learn from him." Jun Moxie pretended to speak, but he could already feel the intense turbulence in his mind. The breakthrough was imminent. Remember, you must never reveal the relationship between this old man and the Jun family. Humph. There was no need for a deliberate warning. He had merely snorted, and had already shown that this mysterious powerhouse couldn't be disobeyed. Jun Moxie. The solitary falcon muttered to himself as he raised his head, only to find that the mysterious black-robed masked man had mysteriously disappeared from his sight. What a fast agility! Solitary Eagle sucked in a mouthful of cold air. He was even more fascinated by the fighting eagle technique that this mysterious master had mentioned. The June family, this old man will go immediately. Solitary Eagle picked up Hai-Chen Feng, and said with a black face, "Brat, after your injuries are healed, you must not tell anyone about today's matter, understand? If even a little bit of it gets out, this old man will skin you alive." Hai-Chen Feng's body was still very weak, and his breathing was very weak. "I will not say a word about this senior's matter." "What do you mean?" Solitary Eagle suddenly stopped in his tracks, and his long hair flew upwards. "So you're saying that you're going to tell anyone about this old man?" "I didn't say that." Hai-Chen Feng snorted twice, and looked down on this so-called martial uncle. "You've done such a shameful thing, and yet you don't call anyone to talk about it. You're even more unreasonable than a bald dog. What kind of logic is this? Why don't you dare to be unreasonable with this senior? It's better to have strength. That's what you mean." The solitary falcon spoke in a rude and unreasonable manner. "You've already seen what happened today. If you were to tell me that I had injured you, and that I had used that technique of self-destruction, then it would have aroused everyone's suspicions. Not just anyone would have been able to save you, and as long as there's suspicion, it would have been inevitable that this senior would have been implicated. You can also feel that even if your master and I join hands, we may not be able to provoke this master. Humph, humph, humph. Think about it yourself." Chapter 208. However, Solitary Eagle was very complacent. He knew that Hai-Chen Feng wouldn't divulge this information no matter what. This was tantamount to sealing his mouth tightly. He wouldn't have to worry about losing face anymore. He would only need to find June Moxie later. He would be able to learn some profound skills and perfect his 17 eagle transformation techniques. How wonderful! However, would June Moxie with a bad temper be so easy to talk to? Speaking of which, June Moxie was very shameless. He had become his own disciple. Then, he had coaxed these two people into going to the June family. Then, he had added, "My disciple June Sunshao has a bad temper." It was clear that he was trying to rip off Solitary Eagle. However, the Solitary Eagle was naturally unaware of this. He was currently full of joy and longing. He reckoned that even if he were to be ripped off, the great master would be very happy to do so. The solitary falcon was sighing in admiration at June Moxie's peerless agility. However, the young master June hadn't even left his original spot. Instead, he had impatiently burrowed into the ground. In fact, he didn't even know how deep he had burrowed into the ground. However, it was conceivable that he wouldn't be able to reach this place if he were to dig a well. It wasn't that June Dashao didn't want to find a more stable place to break through. However, his sea of consciousness had become turbulent the moment he had spoken those last words to Solitary Eagle. The Hongjun Pagoda, which had been temporarily suppressed by June Dashao's consciousness, had once again spouted out a much richer and purer aura. This aura had quickly rushed into his limbs and bones. The Hongjun Pagoda's meridians had suddenly turned into a misty state. The Hongjun Pagoda had started to shake violently. "I can't drag this any longer." Therefore, June Moxie hadn't even heard Solitary Eagle's response. He had used the Yin-Yang escape in a hurry, and had dived into the ground like a mouse. What he didn't know was that his sudden disappearance had given one of the 8 great paragons, the eagle deity, a huge shock. Although the Yin-Yang escape was indeed a peerless divine ability, it was completely different from what Supreme Eagle was thinking. However, how could Supreme Eagle understand the profound principles behind it? He had always been confident in his Qing Gong, and had long believed that his Qing Gong was still unrivaled under the heavens. But today, he was shocked to see someone come and go without a trace in front of him. One could imagine how shocked he was. Because of this, he became even more convinced of the masked man's words. So, he obediently went to look for June Moxie. As for seeking advice from a junior, he didn't mind it at all. After all, there was no such thing as seniority in learning. Only the accomplished would be respected. This was a principle that would never change. Jun Imo Xia ignored the great master falcon, and sat cross-legged on the ground. However, he suddenly felt that the shaking in his mind had become even more intense. Jun Imo Xia's consciousness no longer resisted the suction of the Hongjun Pagoda. Instead, it separated from his body, and flew towards the Hongjun Pagoda like a bolt of lightning. The Hongjun Pagoda's door silently opened. Jun Imo Xia stood on the magnificent first floor of the pagoda. Suddenly, 4 words inexplicably appeared in his mind, guarding the universe. Enlightenment. That was enlightenment. After the illumination came the guarding the universe. Just as these words appeared in his mind, a white light flashed in front of him, and a fragrant aroma assailed his nostrils. The originally illusory staircase on the first floor suddenly became real, and on the staircase, a door appeared out of thin air. It was a heavy and simple door, and that door was slowly opening without a sound. The second floor of the Hongjun Pagoda had finally opened its door to Jun Moxie. Jun Dashao felt an inexplicable excitement in his heart. The first floor of the Hongjun Pagoda had given him the art of unlocking the heavens' fortune. It had given him the art of unlocking the heavens' fortune. Moreover, it had given him the yin-yang escape. Moreover, it had allowed him to move unhindered between Tianxian and Xinxian. And, he hadn't even reached the Gold Xian realm yet. He was like a 3-year-old child. But, he was able to occupy a transcendent position in front of an adult. Moreover, he had the right to speak on equal terms with them. I just don't know what kind of pleasant surprise this second floor will give me. Jun Moxie calmed himself down and stepped forward. He had just arrived at the door when he felt a familiar aura coming from the second floor. Suddenly, right at this moment, the second level of the pagoda flashed chaotically, and countless figures and characters flew out like locusts. They spun in the air for a while, like tired birds returning to their nests, and quickly entered Jun Imo Xia's forehead, disappearing without a trace, not leaving a single trace behind. At the same time, a series of incantations and a few human figures appeared in Jun Moxie's mind, marked with meridian pathways. At the same time, the art of unlocking heaven's fortune officially advanced to the second level. The heart roams the heaven and earth, the will to guard the universe, to eliminate evil and slay the absurd. The heart is like an ice god, the soul 9 revolutions, the heart of loyalty is stable, the heart of heaven is supreme, follow this. After carefully pondering over the chant, Jun Moxie's heart was filled with excitement. Judging from this chant, this second stage might be the true beginning of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. The will of the heavens was supreme, and this was the origin of the Tai Chi. From now on, he could be considered to be on the right path. He stood at the entrance to the second floor, motionless. Jun Dashao was completely unaware that his body, which was underground, was also undergoing earth-shattering changes. Apart from the Hongjun Pagoda's huge amount of spiritual qi washing through his meridians over and over again, a huge amount of heaven and earth spiritual qi had gathered at the top of his head and the Yongquan acupuncture point at the bottom of his feet. The heaven and earth spiritual qi was crazily pouring into his meridians, stretching and expanding. His clothes were unable to resist the violent heaven and earth spiritual qi, and had already turned into ashes without a trace. On the surface of Jun Dashao's skin, the sweat pores of his body were like countless spring mouths, constantly gushing out a dark purple liquid. The qi in his meridians surged violently, like a violent wave. One could even hear the whooshing sound of the qi flowing through his meridians. Jun Moxie was completely unaware that his body was undergoing another round of cleansing, because he was deep in his sea of consciousness, pondering over another matter, a very important matter. In the chant of the second tier, there were 8 words, 9 revolutions of the soul, the Dan heart is stable. When he first cultivated the first tier, there were also 8 words, 9 refinements of the soul, never fall into the yellow springs. The first 2 chants of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, one was 9 refinements, the other 9 revolutions, both had the word 9. 9 is the extreme number. What does this mean? It can't be as simple as a coincidence, right? Jun Imo Xia's mind quickly went through everything that had happened since he had crossed over to this world. After a careful calculation, Jun Xia was shocked to discover that ever since he had obtained the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, there had been a total of 9 changes in his cultivation technique. Not one more, not one less. The first time was when he obtained the Hongjun Pagoda. He suddenly lost control of his body and accidentally entered a different world. The 9th time was when he opened the second level of the Hongjun Pagoda. It really was the 9 refinements of the soul. No wonder he did not enter the Yellow Springs after his death. The 9 refinements of the soul never fall into the Yellow Springs. So it was like this, everything was because of this thing. He could not help but laugh bitterly. It seemed that this second stage of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune had to undergo the so-called 9 revolutions in order to advance to the 3rd level. This art of unlocking heaven's fortune was indeed the most powerful cultivation technique since ancient times. Even the cultivation method was probably the most difficult. As he thought of this, Jun Moxie smiled slightly. He suddenly felt a sense of tranquility in his heart, as if his state of mind had improved by leaps and bounds. In this tranquility, his consciousness had already silently floated into the 2nd level of the Hongjun Pagoda. It was still a huge room, but it was no longer empty. In the middle, there was a 3-legged cauldron. Below the cauldron, there was a cluster of 5 colored flames, pulsating and burning steadily. There was a protrusion at the side, and on top of it, there was a book-like object. It was wrapped in golden leather, but it did not emit any golden light. On the body of the cauldron, there were 3 large ancient characters, Furnace of Unlocking Heaven's Fortune. Jun Moxie had only just seen these 3 characters when they abruptly disappeared. It was extremely strange. Even the audacious hitman Jun was startled by this sudden development. Jun Moxie could not help but carefully examine this mystical cauldron, and finally couldn't help but take 2 steps forward. It seemed as if there was a voice calling him forward, and an inexplicable force was making him approach the cauldron. This inexplicable force was not irresistible, but rather, Jun Dashao was unwilling to resist it. It was as if he was unwilling to resist his closest companion. Just as he approached the cauldron, the 5 colored flames suddenly sprang up with a whoosh, and instantly wrapped Jun Moxie's consciousness inside. Jun Dashao felt as if all the punishments of the 18 layers of hell were being carried out on his body at the same time, but his consciousness was exceptionally clear, and the pain had reached the extreme for a moment, or perhaps it had already exceeded the extreme limit. Jun Moxie's body in the outside world had already stopped discharging the foul juice at this moment, and his consciousness was being burned by the 5 colored flames at the same time, and his naked body was also not spared. It was also wrapped in a ball of 5 colored flames, and was burning fiercely. On the ground, the original 10 acres of red maple forest had unexpectedly withered in an instant, and all the plants on the ground, including the most heat-resistant and tenacious grass, were no exception, and had all turned into dry matter at the same time. Many clouds of fog rose from the ground, and then quickly disappeared without a trace. All the water sources within a radius of several kilometers had evaporated in an instant. Thousands of years later, a place not far from Tianxiang City had gained the name of a land of death. This land of death was not only devoid of living creatures, but not even a single blade of grass could grow in it. It was a spectacular sight. Even if there was a flood, as long as the water had passed, the land would still be incomparably dry, and even if one dug several feet into the ground, there would still be no trace of moisture. Jun Moxie's white and strong body was tossed and turned in the 5 colored flames, and slowly, the flames gradually reduced, and Jun Moxie's body was surprisingly unharmed. Suddenly, a whoosh sound was heard, and Jun Moxie's body disappeared from the ground. And at the same time, his body had actually entered the 2nd level of the Hongjun Pagoda for the first time. The monthly votes list is getting more and more serious with the outbreak of the explosion. If I'm caught in today's explosion, then I'll become a joke. So, I beg for monthly votes. Chapter 209. Inside the Hongjun Pagoda, a real body and an illusory spiritual body faced each other. An irresistible force surged forth, causing the two to merge into one in an instant. The furnace of good fortune emitted a clear and sonorous sound, and a white light rose from the furnace of good fortune. It circled in the air, flashed, and disappeared again. Blood gushed out from June Moxie's wrist like a fountain. The blood did not drip down, but directly shot into the furnace of good fortune. The originally extinguished multicolored flame was nourished by the blood, and the intensity of the fire rose again. It continued to burn, and the entire furnace of good fortune was wrapped in multicolored flames. But June Moxie, who was close at hand, did not feel the heat at all. The flame of primordial chaos. When these three words suddenly appeared in his mind, a dark golden blood light flew out from the furnace of good fortune, and disappeared in front of June Moxie. The wound on June Moxie's hand suddenly disappeared. If it was not for the discomfort of losing a large amount of blood, he would have thought that his hand had never been injured. The multicolored flame suddenly stopped burning, and everything returned to silence, just like when June Moxie first came in. A three-legged furnace was quietly placed in the center of the room. The multicolored flame under the furnace was now only a single spark. It steadily pulsed and slowly burned, as if it could be extinguished at any time, or as if it would continue like this forever. The book-like object on the protrusion at the side was still sitting there quietly. June Moxie suddenly opened his eyes wide, and looked at everything in amazement. After a long time, he unconsciously pinched his thigh. It was so painful that he grimaced in pain. Before he could regain his composure, he was stunned again. How did my body come in? For a moment, he could not believe it, and did not dare to believe it. He ruthlessly pinched himself a few more times, and almost suffocated himself. Only then did he finally confirm that it was really painful. It seems that my body really came in. Does this mean that I can come and go as I please in the future? June Moxie was dizzy from the huge meat pie that fell from the sky. He didn't even realize that he had just pinched a piece of flesh. His body didn't have any cover at all. Because at this moment, June Dashao only felt happiness. Where is happiness? Dear friend, let me tell you, she is not in the shade of the willow tree, he is not in the spring, he is in the pagoda in your mind, cough cough, blood as the guide, intelligence as the support, soul as the power, flame of primal chaos, refining all living things in the world, furnace of good fortune, forming a supreme golden Dan. These two sentences suddenly appeared in June Moxie's mind. The young Master June faintly felt that the relationship between him, the oddly shaped furnace of good fortune, and the multicolored flame of primal chaos was extremely intimate. In fact, it seemed as if the three of them were one entity, and couldn't be separated. June Moxie took 2 steps forward, and bent down to pick up the gold-bound book. His hand had just touched it when the gold-bound book suddenly turned into a multicolored mass of nothingness. It circled in the air, and swept over the furnace of good fortune. Then, just like the previous words and pictures, it swooshed into the space between June Moxie's eyebrows. Dan recipe. It was still the same 2 big ancient characters. They rotated in June Moxie's mind, and then disappeared. What replaced them were countless, densely packed, types upon types, countless methods of concocting Dan, as well as the structure of various kinds of Dan-making materials. I'm rich. June Moxie's mouth opened into an O shape, and his mind was filled with these 2 words. I've really struck it rich this time. June Moxie's heart was in turmoil, but the hitman's calm temperament was at work. He began to circulate his chi, and suppressed his excitement. However, while he was circulating his chi, June Moxie discovered something very surprising, but also very gratifying. The chi in his meridians had changed into the color of the Hongjun Pagoda's chi. It was as if a fog was slowly moving through his meridians, and was clearly visible. The progress of this level was actually so shocking. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune truly lived up to its name as the most powerful cultivation technique since ancient times. It was difficult to cultivate, but the benefits after mastering it were also great. June Moxie estimated that his current strength should be at the peak of the Gold Xian realm if he were to convert it to the Xian Qi of this world. From Silver Xian to Gold Xian peak, Silver Xian early stage, Silver Xian mid stage, Silver Xian peak, Gold Xian early stage, Gold Xian mid stage, Gold Xian peak. In the blink of an eye, he had jumped 6 ranks. It must be known that June Moxie had only been in this world for a little more than 2 months. His arrival in this world was an eventful period. He had transmigrated into a debauchee's body, and his Xian Qi cultivation was only at the 3rd level. His family was in danger, and his life was in danger. And a 3rd-level Xian Qi cultivator was like an ant in this world. The original Jun Sunshao hadn't been crushed to death, and had been able to persevere until Jun Xia had transmigrated into this world, which was already very difficult. After transmigrating, if not for the Hongjun Pagoda, the new Jun Moxie wouldn't have died many times. He had relied on his super cheating device to escape danger time and time again. But it was undeniable that his strength was far from enough. With the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, he had triumphantly advanced all the way to the Silver Xian realm in less than 2 months. This was already an unbelievable miracle. But in this world, the Silver Xian realm was far from enough to protect one's life. It could be said that even then, his life was still in danger. Until a few days ago, when he obtained the yin-yang escape, this heaven-defying technique, Jun Moxie finally had a guarantee for his life. Moreover, it was an absolute guarantee. But it was only a guarantee, and it was far from enough. Jun Moxie's temperament had never been one to preserve what he had achieved. What he worshipped was slaughter and attack. Jun Moxie had never owed anyone a favor, and never asked for anything. If someone respected him, he would return it tenfold. If someone stepped on him, he would return it with a stick. If someone insulted him, he would return it 100-fold. If someone slashed him, his entire family would be destroyed. If someone lied to him, he would remember it for life. The most intolerable thing was betrayal. This was the evil monarch's ultimate character. The evil monarch's reverse scale had been added in this world, and that was family. If anyone dared to touch me, I would destroy their entire family. If anyone dared to hurt me, I would break their arm. No matter who. It was all the same. However, character was character, strength was the deciding factor. If one didn't have strength and only had character, then they would be courting death. Jun Moxie had been looking forward to opening the 2nd level of the Hongjun Pagoda, the 3rd level, and even the 9th level. He knew that in this world, the only thing that could help him was the Hongjun Pagoda. Money and benefits were like flying ashes. Even his own family might not be able to protect him at the critical moment under the threat of the imperial power. First, the Silver Blizzard City had been entangled with each other for more than 10 years. Then, the Shuihun Manor had come menacingly and pushed him too far. And within the Tianxiang City, there were many powerful families entangled with each other, and the struggle for the imperial power, danger lurked everywhere. No one knew how much pressure Jun Moxie was under. Although he had never shown it, but that did not mean that the pressure did not exist. But now that he had opened the 2nd level, even though his own strength was still insignificant, Jun Moxie had the capital to face it head-on. Relying on his gold Xian strength alone was naturally not enough. And it was far from enough. But Jun Mo Xia was confident that he would be able to create an ironclad army for his family in a very short period of time with the help of the pill furnace and the recipe. And his own strength could also increase rapidly. Once the time was ripe, the evil monarch would reveal his sword and fangs in this world. Jun Moxie suddenly felt that the wind and clouds were surging in front of his eyes. Jun Moxie suddenly felt that his heart was in turmoil. Experts of this world, only now do a Jun Mo Xia truly have the ability to face all of you. With a thought, Jun Moxie discovered that he was in the dark underground. He did not know when he had come out of the Hongjun Pagoda. Remembering that he had instructed Solitary Eagle and Hai Chen Feng to go to the Jun residence to find him, Jun Moxie became anxious and rushed out. The sun was dazzling. Jun Moxie stood on the ground with a deep look in his eyes. In this short period of time, whether it was his progress or his gains, they were incomparably huge. This made young Master Jun excited, and somewhat complacent. He was like a pauper who had suddenly won the lottery. Although no one noticed, and he could not let anyone know, his heart was full of eagerness to show off, so he could not help but start to show off. Young Master Jun didn't even have time to realize that there wasn't a single thread of clothing on his body. Looking at the horizon, Jun Moxie clasped his hands behind his back and faintly sighed. The sunset is infinitely beautiful, but it is nearing dusk. Ah! A scream pierced through the air, followed by a young girl's voice full of shame and anger. Pervert. Stool disciple. In broad daylight, you actually. June Moxie looked up and saw two people standing at the edge of the forest about 10 feet in front of him, a man and a woman. The woman's long hair hung down to her shoulders, and she wore a moon-white dress. Her figure was slim, and she was covering her eyes with her hands, stomping her feet and cursing as she quickly turned around. Next to her was a handsome young man with sharp eyebrows and an aquiline nose. His face was full of anger as he unsheathed his sword and pointed it at June Moxie and cursed, "You shameless scoundrel, how dare you be so despicable? This is intolerable. If this young master does not teach you a lesson today, the heavens will not tolerate it." "What? Teach me a lesson? What did I do to you?" June Moxie was a little puzzled. Are these two sick? I am standing here fine, and you come over to shout, kill and rogue. Fuck, this young master does not dare to say that I am handsome, but I am definitely good looking. Why do I look like a rogue? Aren't you insulting me? If you want to cause trouble, just say it. June Dashao wanted to demand an explanation, so he subconsciously took a few steps forward. The young girl had just peeked through the gaps between her fingers. She saw June Xia continue to move towards her. She couldn't help but stomp her feet in embarrassment and anxiousness as she shouted, You lecher. Don't come over. I am very powerful. Don't come over." There was a hint of crying in her anxious tone. She did not know why, but seeing a completely different male body for the first time gave her a strange feeling. She clearly knew that she should not look, but she could not help but be curious and sneaked a few more glances through the gaps of her fingers. Chapter 210. June Dashao was rather puzzled. Could it be that there was something wrong with his sense of beauty? Was this young master's appearance that terrifying? Look, this young lady in front of him was so scared that she was about to cry. The distance between the two sides wasn't too far. With June Dashao's efforts, the distance between the two sides naturally became closer. Little sister Yen Meng, don't panic. Wait for this elder brother to behead this shameless brat with my sword. The young man smiled slightly and said confidently. Then, he slowly walked towards June Dashao with his sword in hand. With a wave of his sword, he intercepted June Dashao and shouted, "Shameless brat, come forward and accept your death." June Moxie saw the gleam of his sword and became even more gloomy. What's going on? How am I a shameless brat? Fuck, isn't this clearly bullying others? But if you want to bully this young master, you've found the wrong target. Even if you want to protect a flower, you can't protect it to this extent. Just because this woman said a few words, you want to kill a stranger you've never met? You're really a motherfucker. Motherfucker, I asked you to protect a flower. I'll turn you into spring mud and protect a flower for a lifetime. The excited June Dashao was inexplicably dampened. For a moment, anger rose in his heart and he became bold. He took large strides forward, intending to teach this brat who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. But just as he took a step forward, he suddenly felt a cold wind blowing all over his body. For a moment, he was surprised and lowered his head to look. You're the pervert. June Dashao shouted and directly covered his crotch with one hand. It turned out that his entire body was clean and smooth, without a single thread of clothing. This was extremely shameful. Running naked and being watched by others. Previously, June Dashao's body had been tempered by the flame of primal chaos. His body was relatively resistant to fire and was not damaged at all. Instead, it was greatly beneficial to him. However, the quality of June Dashao's clothes was clearly not good enough. In the blink of an eye, they turned into ashes and melted into the ground. But when all of this happened, June Xia's body was underground, and his consciousness was in the Hongjun Pagoda, so he was completely unaware of it. As for his physical body, he even used his hands to pinch himself. By right, he should have noticed that he was completely clean. But at that time, he was too engrossed in the fact that he was able to enter the Hongjun Pagoda with his physical body, and completely forgot about everything else. Later on, when he was ejected from the Hongjun Pagoda, he was shocked to find that his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. His heart was filled with excitement and agitation. His mind was filled with thoughts on how to act tough, how to show off, how to bully others. He would only think of himself as a hero, how handsome he was. How would he realize how shameful he was? You, how can you be such a scoundrel? A thief, crying thief. The young girl covered her eyes and stomped her feet. She was extremely embarrassed. You're the scoundrel, and you're calling others scoundrel. You're really shameless. Humph. Young Master Jun yelled out loudly. However, he was surprisingly calm and collected in an instant. Apart from covering little Mo Xia with one hand, his face was carefree and without the slightest bit of awkwardness. He retorted sarcastically, how can a person walking naked on the streets be considered a hoodlum? A person's life in this world comes naked, and he will leave naked. Heaven and earth have bestowed upon him, and he will leave naked. Why can't he see others? Only those who stare at us but are too embarrassed to look, and peek through the gaps between their fingers while cursing others are the real scoundrels. I didn't ask you to look, so what are you looking at? You're the one who has profaned my innocence. A thief, crying thief, and calling me a scoundrel. You're really unreasonable. Jun Moxie twisted logic and said shamelessly, female scoundrel. While Jun Dashao was talking nonsense, he had also directly copied the young girl's words. This had undoubtedly raised the level of shamelessness to a whole new level. It was truly unrivaled in the present age. You. Xiao Fengwu, hurry up and kill this lecher. The young girl covered her eyes and stomped her feet as she shouted, I'm so angry. He actually dared to call me a woman, oomph. Your surname is Xiao. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. I hate people with the surname Xiao the most. This scoundrel's surname Xiao actually dared to show off his strength in front of me, and even looked at my body. He really doesn't know life from death. There isn't a single person with the surname Xiao that's good. Jun Moxie remembered that his third uncle had been harmed by the Silver Blizzard City Xiao family for 10 years. Jun Moxie couldn't help but get angry. He was indeed a bit sensitive towards this surname. The young man named Xiao Fengwu suddenly became furious. He shouted, shameless scoundrel, you still dare to speak rudely? Hand over your life. His long sword shone with a cold light. It was actually a flickering golden light. This young man's cultivation was actually at the gold Xian level. Considering his age, even if his innate talent was inferior to that of Li Yuren's, there wasn't much of a difference. If this had happened half a month ago, then Jun Dashao's Xian Qi cultivation would have been insufficient. Moreover, he wouldn't have been able to use his deadly poison. So, he would have been flustered for a while. But now that he had made a breakthrough, he could basically ignore this kind of strength. The figure in front of Xiao Fengwu's eyes suddenly disappeared as soon as he brandished his sword. Then, a cold wind whooshed past his body. Suddenly, a slap was heard on his face. Then, a bang sound was heard as his crotch was kicked. Suddenly, his body curled up like a shrimp. His sword was thrown to the side with a clang sound. A piece of his robe had been torn off. Although Xiao Fengwu's cultivation wasn't weak, he didn't have much experience in fighting. So, he had been kicked by Jun Dashao. He had lost all his courage, and had cried out in pain. He had lost all his poise, and had stumbled back 10 meters. Then, he raised his head to take a look. He saw that the shameless naked man was calmly wrapping the torn robe around his body. Then, he slowly tied it into a knot. He even jumped a couple of times. Then, he twisted his buttocks to make sure that he wouldn't be exposed again. Only then did he turn his head back. His upper body was still bare, but his skin was sparkling and translucent like jade. His legs were long and slender, and he had broad shoulders and a slender waist. But, after wrapping this half of his robe around his body, he looked free and unrestrained. It seemed as if his entire appearance had changed from a moment ago. His thin lips, slanted eyebrows, and the faint smile on his face made people feel a chill in their hearts. But they couldn't help but be captivated by his elegant demeanor. This guy wasn't even blushing after such a big embarrassment. It was enough to show that the thickness of his skin had reached a level that no one had ever reached before or since. The young girl in the distance had been shocked by this sudden turn of events. She had even forgotten to cover her eyes as she looked at June Imo-sia with her captivating red mouth wide open. She had never imagined that her companion, who was a gold Shen expert, wouldn't be able to stand out amongst his peers. But he was still an outstanding talent amongst his peers. But he couldn't even block a single move from this shameless brat. This man's face was covered in mud, and his appearance couldn't be seen clearly. But it was obvious that he wasn't very old. In fact, he should be younger than her companion. So, how could he be so powerful? What's your name? Where are you from? You dare to provoke me in the Tianxiang city? Do you want to be reborn? Jun Moxie took a step forward. His long bare legs were glistening as he walked towards the young man. This young master will teach you a lesson today, you bastard. You think you can kill someone just because you don't agree with me? You're a bastard. Do you understand? You're lucky that I have a good temper. Otherwise, I would have cut you alive. Damn you. Jun Moxie cursed in a vicious voice. He didn't want to stay any longer. So, he turned around and walked away. Boy! You've got guts. Don't let me see you again. The Silver Blizzard City will never let you off. Xiao Fengwu shouted fiercely. His eyes were filled with hatred as he smiled cruelly. Boy, just wait for your entire family to be annihilated. My surname isn't Xiao if I let even a dog escape from your family. Jun Moxie's footsteps turned back. His eyes suddenly turned into two icy swords as he looked at Xiao Fengwu's face. The Silver Blizzard City? You're from the Xiao family of the Silver Blizzard City. His tone was cold and gloomy. That's right. Xiao Fengwu struggled to stand up. He then smiled fiercely. Are you afraid now? Let me tell you, it's too late. Your entire family will be annihilated unless you kneel down and apologize to this young master. Very good. Very good. Jun Moxie slowly nodded. His face was calm, there was no trace of anger or joy on his face. Since you're from the Xiao family and you're so arrogant, I'll be unfair to my third uncle if I don't torture you. I'll torture you. Kneel down. Xiao Fengwu thought that the other party would be afraid and admit defeat. That way, he would be able to save his face. He couldn't help but feel proud of himself. I'll kneel to you, motherfucker. Jun Moxie stepped forward and heavily slapped Xiao Fengwu's face. This slap was much heavier than the previous one. Xiao Fengwu's head was thrown back as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Jun Moxie followed up and punched Xiao Fengwu's eyes twice. Suddenly, a giant panda appeared in the world. I'll show you. I'll show you. I'll show you. Is the Silver Blizzard City Xiao family that great? I'll show you how to threaten me. I'll show you that you're more pretentious than this young master. I'll show you how to exterminate my entire family. I'll show you how to act recklessly. You motherfucker, act recklessly again. I'll beat you to death. Bang! 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 I'll make you kneel down and apologize. Go to your grandmother. Bang! 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 Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Jun Moxie grabbed Xiao Fengwu's hair and swung him up. He cursed, fuck you. Then, Xiao Fengwu fell to the ground. He didn't know how many times he had fallen to the ground. Suddenly, his grip loosened, and he grabbed a handful of hair and scalp. Xiao Fengwu had already been sent flying. He fell to the ground with a puff sound. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Jun Moxie didn't stop there. He once again pounced on Xiao Fengwu. His feet moved up and down like raindrops as he struck Xiao Fengwu's head, body, back, and stomach like a storm. Xiao Fengwu had beaten the youth several times until he woke up from his coma. He couldn't even scream twice before he fainted again. One of them was lying on the ground, while the other had a cloth wrapped around his waist. The young girl felt that her companion had turned into a human sandbag in the blink of an eye. Then, he was sent flying through the air, and then, he lost consciousness. Everything happened too fast. It was too much for the eyes to take in. The young girl's naive brain didn't even have time to react before everything changed. Perhaps it should be said that everything had already become a foregone conclusion. What are you screaming for? Jun Moxie fiercely looked at her. He panted a few times, and fiercely rolled his eyes. He pointed his finger at her and shouted in a rough voice, "Motherfucker! Die for me!" The young girl screamed again. Her small mouth slightly opened. Her lips were blue, and her face was pale. She trembled as she asked, "Me? Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your monthly votes. You've given me such a big surprise. Thank you. Thank you. Today is the second night watch. The second night watch may be a little late. I should be able to come out around 21 o'clock. Please don't take offense if I'm a little late." Chapter 211. If it's not you, then are you a ghost? Jun Moxie didn't have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. He glared at her fiercely and asked, "What's your name?" I'm called Han Yan. Mang. I'm very powerful, don't hit me." The little girl was so frightened that her face turned deathly pale. She seemed to have forgotten that she had a very profound Xian Qi cultivation. Ever since she was born, wherever she went, people would always treat her with respect. When had she ever seen such a tyrannical and overbearing person? This was simply a combination of a super rogue and a ruffian. The little girl was really frightened. Who would have thought that she would sneak out of the magnificent jewel hall to play and meet such a demon? The little girl's heart was beating like a drum. She had already thought of countless extremely unfavorable possibilities for her, and the more she thought about it, the more scared she became. Han Yan Meng? Jun Moxie stared at her. "This kid is from the Silver Blizzard City, so are you?" "Oh yes, who is Han Yan Yao to you?" She's my sister, don't hit me, my sister loves me very much, she's very powerful." Han Yan Meng replied in a trembling voice. Her purpose was very simple, don't get hit. Jun Moxie was startled. So this little girl was the little princess of the Silver Blizzard City that Mu Shuetong had mentioned before? That's the sister-in-law of the third uncle. Strictly speaking, he's still my elder. Holy shit! Is this your family's dog? Jun Moxie pointed at the miserable Xiao Fengwu on the ground and asked. No. Han Yan Meng nervously waved her hands. "He's not my family's dog." Without waiting for little Miss Han to finish, Jun Dashao cut her off. "I was wondering why you were so uncultured, so you're a wild dog." The little girl hurriedly waved her hand to explain, "He's not a stray dog, he's a human, he's my senior brother. His surname is Xiao, and his name is... Is he human? Why didn't I see that? He's a dog." Jun Moxie once again interrupted the little girl's words, and conveniently wiped his face with his hand. His hand was stained with Xiao Fengwu's blood, and it made him look even more ferocious and terrifying. If I say he's a dog, then he is a dog. An uneducated wild dog. Understand? No, he's not a dog, The little girl had been pampered since childhood, and had never seen such a tyrannical person. She was flustered, and didn't know how to distinguish between the two. Suddenly, an idea came to her mind, and she blurted out, Look, he doesn't have a tail. Dogs have tails, so he's a human." Jun Moxie was startled, and couldn't help but laugh. He deliberately said, "That's because you don't know that his tail has been chopped off. Otherwise, how could he still act like a dog?" He glanced at Xiao Fengwu as he said this, and found that there was something different about him. He was beaten up so badly, and yet he was still gasping for breath. His chest was heaving up and down, and his fingers were moving subconsciously. It seemed as if he was about to wake up. Jun Moxie's heart stirred. His cultivation is limited, so there's no reason for him to be able to take such a beating. What's going on? There's definitely something strange going on. Jun Moxie tightened the cloth around his waist, and strode toward Xiao Fengwu. He frowned as he looked at him from head to toe. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand, and with a tearing sound, he tore the clothes in front of Xiao Fengwu's chest. He immediately saw that Xiao Fengwu was wearing a strange shiny silver soft armor. Jun Moxie grabbed it with his hand, and with both hands, he tried to tear it, but it didn't budge. This is really good stuff. Jun Dashao smacked his lips, and without any trace of politeness, he undressed Xiao Fengwu on the spot, and completely stripped the soft armor off his body. Then, he grabbed the long sword on the ground, and with a shake of his hand, he stabbed the soft armor with all his might. He felt that the tip of the sword was extremely soft, and didn't exert any force on it. The soft armor didn't even have the slightest mark on it. I didn't think that this brat would have such a good thing on him. It seems that I didn't teach him a good lesson before. So, I didn't say anything, and madly beat up the defenseless Xiao Fengwu. Xiao Fengwu became completely motionless in just a moment. However, Jun Dashao knew that his attacks were accurate. This brat might have fainted, but he wouldn't die. He just wouldn't wake up for a while. Han Yen Meng wanted to step forward to help her senior brother, but she was flustered. So, Jun Moxie slapped her face, and sent her flying. She covered her face, and squatted on the ground, and started to cry. Her tears couldn't stop flowing down her cheeks. What is this? Jun Moxie squinted at Han Yen Meng. There was a trick to being a villain, and that was to do things to the end. Snow silkworm armor. Han Yen Meng trembled with fear as she looked at him with teary eyes. Suddenly, she felt somewhat indignant in her heart. This shameless brat. His skin is even more delicate than mine. It's even more beautiful than mine. There's no justice in this world. He's so ungentlemanly. Who would hit a girl? Snow silkworm armor, good stuff, not bad, not bad. Jun Moxie couldn't bear to put it down. He flipped it over and over in his hand as he looked at it. Han Yen Meng pursed her lips in a secretive manner. But, she couldn't stop the tears from welling up in her eyes. The snow silkworm armor was admittedly a rare treasure in the continent. But, it wasn't rare in the Silver Blizzard City. In fact, almost everyone had one. This was a unique treasure of the Silver Blizzard City. However, this snow silkworm armor wasn't even worth mentioning in terms of preciousness. This guy in front of me must be a country bumpkin who hasn't seen the world. Even this snow silkworm armor is so rare. But, I'm wearing something of a higher grade. Do you have something even better? What's even better? Jun Moxie didn't seem to be looking at her. But, the expression on her face was very clear. This little girl's experience in the world was too shallow. So, her sneaky action of curling her lips was a subconscious action. And, it was quite secretive. But, it fell into Jun Dashao's eyes. What does she mean? Ha! Jun Moxie can obviously see that she's obviously looking down on him. So, Jun Dashao's face suddenly appeared in front of Han Yen Meng's eyes. The best one is the Xian silkworms. I don't have it on me. Han Yen Meng was startled. She looked at his bloody face in horror as it rapidly enlarged in front of her eyes. She was so scared that her heart almost stopped beating. But, she reined in her horse at the last moment, and didn't say anything. This country bumpkin bully will definitely snatch my armor if I say it. A Xian silkworm's armor is nothing, but it's a close-fitting one. Mysterious silkworm armor? Well, he. Jun Moxie looked at her body maliciously. Han Yen Meng's hair stood on end. She couldn't help but cross her arms. Don't worry. I know that you have that mysterious silkworm armor on you. But, I won't rob a girl. I'm very well-mannered. June Moxie looked at her evilly. His heart was in a bad mood. If I can get rid of the Silver Blizzard City Xiao family, and then work hard to get third uncle and Han Yenyao together, then, this little girl in front of me will become my elder. Should I call her aunt? Or should I call her aunt? Oh my god. This is too unbalanced. I have a mysterious silkworm armor on me. But, I can't snatch it. This is really depressing. June Moxie stretched out his hand, and pinched her face to vent his dissatisfaction. Han Yen Meng screamed in horror. June Moxie laughed and swaggered away. Miss Han, this brat, hey, you can call him senior sister from now on. You don't need to call him senior brother, haha. Behind him, Han Yen Meng cried out in fear. But, she was relieved to see that the tyrannical villain had finally left. She patted her small chest in fear, and heaved a long sigh of relief. But, she immediately wrinkled her pretty eyebrows. Because, she suddenly remembered the last words of that evil man before he left. Why? This is obviously senior brother Xiao. Why did he make me call him senior sister? I don't understand. That man's words are incoherent. It seems that he's a martial arts madman. In any case, he's definitely not normal. Han Yen Meng opened her big round eyes. She was puzzled, and thought for a while. Then, she muttered to herself. She finally came to a conclusion. A madman's thinking can't be understood by ordinary people. I won't lower myself to the level of a madman. The autumn wind gradually became stronger. Xiao Fengwu's injuries weren't light, and he didn't show the slightest sign of waking up. Han Yen Meng had never experienced anything like this before. She stood there alone, and didn't know what to do. She stood there in a daze for a long time, and her heart became more and more fearful. Then, an extremely strange phenomenon occurred at this time. The maple forest started to shrink as the wind became stronger. Then, it slowly turned into ashes. The leaves, the branches, and the trunks of the trees seemed to have been made of flour. And they slowly disappeared into the world with the autumn wind. Han Yen Meng was so shocked that her small mouth was wide open. She couldn't close it for a long time. Then, she screamed in fear, and tried to escape. But, she saw that Xiao Fengwu was still lying unconscious on the ground. In fact, he seemed to be on the verge of dying at any moment. She couldn't help but scream in fear. She grabbed Xiao Fengwu's clothes, and rushed into the city. She was panicking, but her speed was extremely fast. In her heart, the little girl reminded herself of one thing: what the hell, of course, June Moxie wouldn't kill Xiao Fengwu right now. Killing Xiao Fengwu might give him a temporary sense of satisfaction, but it wouldn't be a good thing in the long run. The Xiao family had pushed a member of the younger generation like Xiao Fengwu to accompany the Silver City's little princess for a stroll. So, the Xiao family's intentions were obvious. In other words, Xiao Fengwu was the most favored and outstanding person in the younger generation of the Xiao family. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been pushed out to pursue the Silver Blizzard City's little princess. However, such a person's strength was not very high. How good was that? If they kept him alive, he might be able to restrain the Xiao clan at a critical moment. If they rashly uprooted the Xiao clan and only left a bunch of old fellows like Shen Xian, wouldn't they go crazy? While it was true that one had to hit the snake where it hurt, it was best not to hit it when one wasn't confident that they could kill the snake completely. Rashly touching it would provoke the cruelest backlash. The June family's current strength couldn't withstand such a serious backlash. So, it would be easier to bring out the effects of such a thing. June Moxie felt the wind blowing through his crotch as he walked. He couldn't describe how uncomfortable it was. He didn't have any clothes to cover his lower body. So, it was only natural for him to be unable to move freely. There was a poem that said, "The wind blows the chicken's eggs, and the wind blows the buttocks." Recommend a new book, The God of Swords. It's a very awesome title. I heard that the main character used to be Dugachobai. Chapter 212. What kind of person was Jun Imo-sie? He used his evasion technique to sneak into a tailor's shop, steal a robe, and put it on. Then, he hung the torn robe on a hanger, and continued his way back to the Jun family's residence. The young Master Jun's strength wasn't up to par yet. If he had enough strength, he could have used the Yin-Yang escape to return to the Jun family's residence. In that case, he wouldn't even have to worry about the fact that he still had a piece of cloth on his body. In fact, he wouldn't even need to worry about being completely naked. The Jun residence was in an uproar. Not only was the Jun residence in an uproar, but even the housekeeper of the Jun residence was in an uproar. One of the 8 great masters, Solitary Eagle, had suddenly arrived at the Jun residence. How great of an honor was this? Which family in the secular world could have such an honor? Solitary Eagle arrived at the Jun residence, and straightforwardly announced his name. Of course, he didn't mention his own purpose, but instead used the excuse of treating Hai Chen-feng. The 8 great masters were after all the 8 great masters. It was one thing to ask for advice, but to say in front of so many people that he had come to ask for advice from a brat was something that the Solitary Eagle could not bring himself to say. The Jun residence was in an uproar. Grandpa Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui both came out to greet the Solitary Eagle and the half-dead Hai Chen-feng respectfully. When he heard that the Jun family's 3rd young master, Jun Moxie, had yet to return, Solitary Eagle generously expressed his indifference, and began to chat with Grandpa Jun while tasting the Jun family's fragrant tea. Jun Zhantian was a veteran of the battlefield, and was also one of the top figures in the imperial court. It could be said that he had seen a lot of big scenes, and was naturally able to maintain his composure. After the initial shock, he quickly calmed down, and began to chat with Solitary Eagle in a very natural manner. Grandpa Jun deliberately took the time to instruct, Wui, go and see Imo-sie. If he returns, tell him to come quickly. Saving people is like putting out a fire. We can't delay it. What Grandpa Jun meant was, Solitary Eagle came to seek treatment because he was certain that his grandson could be saved. His precious grandson had indeed cured his son's chronic illness, but he hadn't used his medical skills since then. What if he didn't meet the requirements of the Solitary Eagle? That wouldn't be good. Therefore, he asked Jun Wui to wait at the door first. When Jun Moxie returned home, he could ask him what was going on. If he wasn't confident, he shouldn't treat him rashly. However, the arrival of Solitary Eagle had solved a long-standing problem for Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui. It was 3rd young Master Jun's master who directed this old man to come here. Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui were not surprised by Solitary Eagle's words. They thought to themselves, sure enough. We've long guessed that this kid has a mysterious and powerful master. But this kid's mouth is very tight, and he doesn't seem to have the slightest intention of revealing it. Now we understand that there really is such a person. Moreover, he's a very powerful person. No wonder this kid didn't put the Shui Hun manner in his eyes. He was so hot-blooded and full of confidence. It turns out that this is the root of his problem. Moreover, Jun Zhantian was able to tell from the Solitary Falcon's words that Jun Imo-sie's master was exceptionally valiant. In fact, he had said that he had guided me to come here. What kind of person was Solitary Eagle? He was recognized as one of the 8 great masters. He was the pinnacle of this world. Who could guide him? Who was qualified to guide him? Wasn't this person on the verge of being revealed? Moreover, when the Solitary Falcon had mentioned Jun Imo-sie's master, his attitude had been very respectful. This had made Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui's imaginations run wild. The Solitary Falcon has always been known for his unruly character, and I'm afraid that even Li Ju Tian of the 8 great masters wouldn't be able to earn such respect from him. So, who is the person who is more powerful than Li Ju Tian in this world? And who is the person who is most easily admired? Is there a need to ask? It must be the strongest of the 8 great masters, Yun Bichen. No wonder he has Yun Bichen's backing. No wonder Jun Moxie wasn't afraid of Li Ju Tian. Li Ju Tian is nothing in front of Yun Bichen. This kid is very secretive. He secretly worshipped the strongest of the 8 great masters, Yun Bichen, as his master. But, I've never heard that Yun Bichen has any medical skills. Ah, I guess he's hiding his true abilities. Grandpa Jun and Third Master Jun didn't know that the solitary eagle would readily admit that he wasn't as good as Yun Bichen. However, Yun Bichen wasn't worthy of his respect. In fact, Solitary Eagle had an extremely arrogant personality. He was very confident that he would challenge Yun Bichen for the title of the world's #1 Xian Qi if he were to master it. Therefore, the Solitary Eagle and Grandpa Jun revealed a smile of tacit understanding. Let's drink tea. However, no one knew that the two men were thinking of two completely different things. At this time, Guangdong Lu had heard the news, and had come to pay a visit. Seeing that one of the 8 great masters, Solitary Eagle, had personally come to visit the Jun family, Guangdong Lu secretly wiped away his cold sweat. It turns out that the Jun family has a powerful backer like Solitary Eagle. No wonder the Shuihun Manor is only an organization, and Li Ju Tian isn't around most of the time. So, the Shuihun Manor is only a branch of the Li Ju Tian family. But the Jun family has sent a great master in person. Which is more important? Fortunately, I was hot-blooded, and made a desperate decision. Otherwise, if I were to get involved in this mess, the Shuihun Manor, the Solitary Eagle, and the Jun family would be on the other side. It seems that this lord of the Jun family is very wise, and has chosen the stronger side. My position hasn't wavered. Sweat. Everyone's thoughts were completely different, but everyone believed that they had guessed correctly. They had already put on the hat of divine strategy and ingenious foresight on their heads. Everyone was immensely proud of themselves, and each of them had a card up their sleeves. Therefore, the guests and the host were all happy. Jun Moxie returned home at a time when everyone in the hall was in the middle of a heated discussion. Except for Solitary Eagle, who was somewhat taciturn, everyone else seemed to be unusually excited. Jun Wui grabbed his nephew. Where are you going? Did you know that the Solitary Eagle has come to find you? Do you really have medical skills? Jun Moxie was in a hurry to return to his small courtyard to put on his underwear. It's okay, let him wait. I'll go see him after I change my clothes. Jun Moxie was in a hurry to leave. Jun Wui grabbed him. Why do you need to change your clothes? Aren't you clean? Go quickly. Half carrying, half pushing, and half rushing, young Master Jun, who was in a vacuum state, savagely dragged into the hall. So, it's you. Solitary Eagle raised his head and immediately recognized the youth who brewed the heavenly wine. He was the disciple of the mysterious master, the Jun family's 3rd young master. Suddenly, he was pleasantly surprised. So it's an old friend, and a little friend who respects me very much. This little friend doesn't look like someone who is difficult to talk to, so now there's no problem. I say, you brat, hurry up and bring me 2 jars of your wine. You've made me suffer a lot. How can I drink any other wine after drinking your wine? Now that I've found you, everything will be settled. The solitary falcon's saliva almost flowed out as he thought of the wine. He didn't even care about his business anymore. 10,000 taels for a jar. If you want to drink, bring me the money first, no haggling. Jun Moxie's words shocked both Grandpa Jun and Guangdong Lu. These two were people who had seen the world and were truly courageous, but after hearing Jun Dashao's words, Guangdong Lu was nearly scared to death. Although Grandpa Jun was a bit stronger, his face also changed slightly. Both of them cried out in their hearts, "This is one of the 8 great masters, how can you not know the gravity of the situation?" He expressed his approval of your wine, that is giving you a lot of face. You should have used this opportunity to build a good relationship with him, but you actually opened your mouth and asked for a sky-high price. What kind of courage is this? What if you annoy him? This was completely out of their expectations. Not only did the great Master Eagle not feel offended, he even laughed out loud in a carefree manner. Damn it, you still dare to ask me for money? You are the only one under the heavens. After laughing for a while, he said, I do have some money on me, but it is definitely not enough. Can I borrow it for now? Tonight, I will go rob a few rich families and rob them of a few 100,000 taels of silver. First, I will drink to my heart's content. What do you say? Everyone was speechless. This was also one of the 8 great masters. How could he be acting like a robber? I probably didn't make myself clear earlier. In addition to not haggling, this little account is a small business. Only cash transactions, no credit, no debt, please forgive me. Jun Moxie did not have the slightest intention of making an exception. His tone became even more unyielding. If you don't have money, even the Heavenly King will not buy it. Young Master Jun was brimming with confidence. I have a trump card in my hand. You came here to ask for my techniques. You even asked this young master to seek medical treatment for your wronged nephew. And now, you want me to drink wine? These are 3 things. How can I not pay a price? Is there still justice in this world? Solitary Eagle's face turned bitter, and there was even a hint of pleading in it. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows and angrily said, If you annoy me, I will go rob you. Don't regret it. I won't send you off. Jun Moxie said in a frivolous manner, Go out and turn left. Walk 700 steps forward and turn right. You will reach the headquarters of the richest family in the empire, the Murong family. There is a lot of silver there. I suggest you go there. You will only be unable to carry it, but you will definitely have enough. If you think that this target is too hard to take, then you can choose to go out and turn right. Keep walking straight, and you won't need to take a turn. You will definitely see a very tacky golden door. That will be the home of the Imperial Revenue Minister. There is also a lot of silver there. Quickly go and rob it. Also, the mansions of the princes are nearby. Even the richest family that is the furthest away is not too far away. I welcome you back from robbing. Jun Moxie said with a smile, Old Eagle, I want to congratulate you. As long as you rob this one round, it will be enough for you to drink wine for 3 lifetimes. Not only will you be able to drink to your heart's content, you will even be able to bathe in my wine every day. Chapter 213. Solitary Eagle was flabbergasted. What kind of person was this? Apart from the 2 of them, everyone else had the same look on their faces. Their eyeballs had dropped to the ground. This was one of the 8 great masters. How could Lord Jun Sunshao speak to him like this, and yet he didn't even flare up? What was going on? Wasn't this world too crazy? Forget it, this old man can't bring himself to do this. If you don't want to drink, then don't drink. It's just a cup of wine. This old man will quit, okay? If I don't drink, I'll die. The solitary falcon sat down on a chair with a depressed look on his face. I really want to drink. I heard that you came to find me today. Jun Moxie chuckled, What's the matter? Your old undying master asked me to find you. He wants you to treat this guy. Then, there are some other small matters that we can talk about when we're free. Solitary Eagle's old undying master almost made Jun Dashao spit out his rice. You should have heard it. I'm not a person who doesn't get up early without benefits. I never do things that don't benefit me. Jun Moxie shook his head with a look of disapproval. Why should I treat him? That's what your master said. Solitary Eagle was a little annoyed. He now somewhat understood what that mysterious expert meant when he said that my disciple has a bad temper. Then why don't you let him treat him? What do you want me to do? He is him, and I am me. Why should I listen to him? Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. Do I have to treat him just because he asked me to? Wouldn't that make me lose face? Solitary Eagle stared at him speechlessly. He had never seen such an outrageous disciple. In this world, the heavens, the earth, the king, and the master are the most important. When the master asks the disciple to do something, no matter if it's possible or not, the disciple must do it with his life. Moreover, what kind of person was Jun Dashao's master? He was a senior expert that even Supreme Eagle Big Senior would prostrate himself before. If others had such a master, they would worship him like a god every day. However, this disciple in front of him seemed to be even more arrogant than his master. Was this world crazy? Why don't you just tell me what you want? When Solitary Eagle said this, he felt like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. I want him. You're the guarantor. Jun Moxie smiled as he pointed his finger at Hai Chen Feng. If I heal his injuries, it would be tantamount to giving him a new life. I want him to work for me for 3 years. This request isn't too much, is it? I can't agree on his behalf. No matter what, this kid is still Tian Xian, and he's considered a master. He can be considered as one of the top figures in this world. Solitary Eagle shook his head. We have to ask him himself. Why don't you ask him yourself? Jun Moxie's eyelids drooped as he picked up a cup of fragrant tea from the table. Then, he raised his head and poured the tea into his mouth. I'll ask him in a few days. I have a lot of time recently, so I'm not in a hurry. You're not in a hurry, but I am. You have a lot of time, but this kid may die if you delay any longer. Solitary Eagle felt like grinding his teeth. I'll wait for you to heal his injuries, and then spit out the Flying Eagle's secret arts cultivation method. See how this old man will deal with you then. You think you're so great just because you have an expert as your master? You'll think that the 8 great masters are made of clay if you don't vent your anger. Even if you're made of clay, you'll still have some manners. Looking at this kid's appearance, he's asking for a beating. Solitary Eagle squatted down to ask Hai Chen Feng. He inadvertently squinted his eyes, and suddenly discovered that Jun Moxie's robe was black. The solitary falcon retched, I'll be damned. I'm going to get a needle's eye. Did this kid just crawl out of a brothel? He looks like a dog, but why is he acting like this? Hai Chen Feng's expression was exceptionally firm and unyielding even though he couldn't open his mouth to speak. Hai Chen Feng glared at Solitary Eagle, and wouldn't compromise. Are you kidding me? I'm a master of Tian Xian. Would I be willing to be a follower of an aristocratic family's young master for 3 years just to save my life? I'd be better off dead. Hai Chen Feng didn't budge no matter how Solitary Eagle tried to persuade him. The great master Solitary Eagle was so anxious that the corners of his mouth started to bubble. You can't even persuade a person. You're one of the 8 great masters. You're only a so-so, Jun Dashao said in a disdainful tone. Watch me. Solitary Eagle moved aside. Jun Moxie moved closer to Hai Chen Feng, and whispered something in his ear. His voice was low, but it seemed to be quite urgent. Hai Chen Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. His vitality had been greatly damaged, and his injuries were extremely serious. The fact that he was able to survive until now was thanks to his excellent physical condition. Moreover, he had been treated by the young Master Jun, otherwise, he wouldn't have known where he would have died by now. Even so, he couldn't speak. But after listening to Jun Moxie's words, he suddenly struggled to speak. If that's the case, then forget about 3 years. I'll follow you, for a lifetime. Jun Moxie pretended to be at ease as he stood up. He then clapped his hands, and cast a sidelong glance at Solitary Eagle. Solitary Eagle's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he roared, Damn it! What did you say to him? Why did this stubborn fellow suddenly agree to it? What kind of witchcraft did you use? The Solitary Eagle couldn't understand what kind of godly words could have made Hai Chen Feng so excited. Not only did he agree, but he also seemed to be glowing with vitality. In fact, it seemed as if he would have risked his life if someone hadn't allowed him to follow that bastard. Humph, the secrets of the heavens can't be revealed. The actions of great masters are always unpredictable. So, how can you speculate about them? Jun Moxie smiled evilly. No. You brat, you have to tell me. Are you going to tell me or not? Solitary Eagle's face turned red. He had lost a lot of face. Hai Chen Feng had remained indifferent even though he had tried to talk his way out. But Hai Chen-feng had happily agreed after this brat had said a few words. The gap between us is too big. These two are definitely meeting for the first time. So, how can this happen? June Moxie smiled mysteriously and said, I just told him a few words. As long as you follow me, I guarantee that you'll be able to use your own strength to oppress Solitary Eagle. Fu *K. Solitary Eagle was furious. What kind of shameful words are those? But, he agreed with that one sentence. June Moxie folded his arms and smiled. Just because of him? He won't be able to do it in 100 years. Solitary Eagle looked at Hai Chen-feng contemptuously. He felt an uncontrollable evil fire in his stomach. Then, we'll wait and see. June Moxie said calmly. Seeing June Moxie's expression, Solitary Eagle suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of guilt in his heart. This guy can't really do it, can he? June Mo-sia looked at Hai Chen-feng's injuries, and suddenly thought of something. His injuries seemed to be from the inside out, so how did he get this kind of injury? He asked as he looked at the solitary falcon. Solitary Eagle's old face turned red. It was red and hot. He felt a little embarrassed. He stammered, but couldn't say anything. What happened? June Moxie was well versed in the art of beating a drowning dog. So, he didn't stop asking. Don't ask. Why are you chattering like a woman? Solitary Eagle flew into a rage out of humiliation. His face turned black as he roared, hurry up and treat his injuries. He. June Moxie shrugged his shoulders for a while. Then, he suddenly pulled a long face and said, pick him up and follow me. You're ordering me around? Solitary Eagle's aura suddenly erupted. You've got guts, brat. You can do whatever you want. June Moxie didn't care. He turned around and walked away. If you still want to save him, then carry him and follow me. If someone else comes to carry him, I'll slap him to death. Do you think I won't dare to do that? Solitary Eagle watched June Moxie's figure disappear into the hall. His eyes were like copper bells. His long hair was fluttering even though there was no wind. The anger in his heart had already reached its peak. He turned his head to look. Grandpa June and the others were in the hall a moment ago. However, they had already realized that the situation wasn't looking good. So, not even half of them were there to watch the fun. Watch the fun of a great master? It's better not to watch this kind of fun. Solitary Eagle stamped his foot ferociously. The entire hall shook as if there was an earthquake. Dust rustled down. Solitary Eagle bent down to pick up Hai Chen-feng. However, when he saw the half-dead boy in his arms, his eyes revealed a happy smile. It was obvious that Hai Chen-feng was gloating over the fact that Solitary Eagle had suffered a defeat at the hands of June Moxie. Solitary Eagle smiled sinisterly and said in a low voice. Aren't you happy, brat? I'll make you hover between life and death every day once your injuries are healed. With a whooshing sound, he left the hall and followed after June Moxie. Grandpa June, Jun Wui, and Guangdong Lu had already left the hall. They could clearly feel the hall shaking violently. Even the ground beneath their feet trembled a few times. Grandpa June, Jun Wui, and Guangdong Lu were left speechless. He truly deserves to be called a great master. Just a stomp of his feet and he already has such power. Truly amazing. Guangdong Lu's face was full of admiration, but the object of his admiration was not Solitary Eagle. Grandpa June has such an outstanding grandson. He's even friends with two of the 8 great masters, the Azure Great Master and the Desert Eagle God. The June family has a worthy successor. It's only a matter of time before the June family becomes a true aristocratic family. God bless the June family. Guangdong Lu had already said that the June family had a worthy successor. But at that time, it was just a perfunctory remark. But this time, he was saying it from the bottom of his heart. How could Grandpa June and Jun Wui not understand what he was saying? Grandpa June stroked his beard and narrowed his eyes as he smiled in a reserved manner. You flatter me. Lord Guan is overpraising me. Ha ha ha. Even though he was speaking modestly, the smile on his face was getting wider and wider. In the end, the corners of his mouth were almost touching his ears. Guan Donglu sneered in his heart. Look at you, old man, your mouth is like a hippopotamus, and you're still pretending to be modest? This is even more unpleasant to look at than being arrogant. Guan Donglu sighed deeply. Why don't my two sons have this kind of ability? Why don't they have this kind of opportunity? What kind of opportunity is this? A master that even the 8 great masters would respect? Let's not talk about their master. Even the eagle god of the prairie would be so nervous that he wouldn't be able to speak a complete sentence if he were to see the eagle god. In fact, he would be trembling so much that he wouldn't even be able to stand properly. In fact, it would be a miracle if he wasn't scared to death. But, how could he be like Jun Imo Xie? He was laughing and scolding in anger. This is the level, this is the depth, this is the depth, this is the depth. The Lord Guan looked up to the sky and sighed. He had been completely defeated. At our current speed, we can write around 7,000 words a day. If we send 6,000 words, we can save 1,000 words. If we're in a good condition, we can write 9,000 to 10,000 words. Therefore, our outburst is basically set in time. As long as we save 2 chapters, we'll prepare for an outburst. During the outburst, we'll maintain a minimum of 4 chapters. Or 5 chapters, or even 6 chapters. Since Jun Xie's uploading speed has been a bit slow, but the only thing worth being proud of is that no matter what the situation is, we'll always maintain a minimum of 2 chapters a day. This is the least I can do for my brothers and sisters. Chapter 214. As soon as he stepped into the courtyard, even with his cultivation, Solitary Eagle couldn't help but jump in fright. In the courtyard, a huge meatball was trembling and rolling around. Solitary Eagle tried hard to identify it for a long time before he finally confirmed that this meatball looked like a human. It was actually a human. Fuck me. Solitary Eagle cursed in his heart. I've heard about how good the living conditions of young masters of aristocratic families are, but there's no need to eat like this, is there? This is really too much. Speaking of which, Tang Yuan's injury wasn't very serious. Under Jun Dashao's meticulous care, he was able to get up and walk these few days. But these days of being bedridden, coupled with the treatment from Jun Dashao's spiritual energy, Tang Yuan's already good appetite almost doubled again. Now, he couldn't even wear most of his original clothes. His belly, which was originally only hanging down to his knees when he stood up, was now almost hanging down to his feet. Therefore, looking at his big belly, Tang Dashao felt a sense of crisis in his heart. He had to lose weight. Tang Dashao was now very worried about his future sexual happiness. With this body shape, how could he talk about sexual happiness? There was nothing he could do about it. The steel gun was still there, and there was enough ammunition, but he couldn't fire it. What kind of beauty could stand up to Fatty's body shape? Therefore, in the past few days, apart from drawing up business plans when he had nothing to do, Tang Yuan began to run to lose weight. However, the more he worked, the more tired he became. And when he was tired, his appetite also increased, therefore, his weight naturally continued to rise. This caused Tang Dashao to fall into a vicious cycle that was very difficult to break out of. When Solitary Eagle arrived, Tang Yuan was running in the courtyard, although in the eyes of anyone, it was just a huge meatball wriggling, right? It was wriggling. This word was more appropriate to use in this situation. Tang Yuan felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine. Raising his head in surprise, he discovered that a black-clothed man was standing in front of him. His face was cold and his eyes were icy cold. Tang Dashao was already in a bad mood, and when he saw the coffin face, he felt even more uncomfortable. He glared at him and scolded, "Old man, what are you looking at? Have you never seen a handsome guy before?" The muscles on the solitary falcon's face twitched unbearably. "Of course I've seen handsome men, I've even seen the world's most beautiful woman in the past, but I've never seen someone like you who calls himself handsome. I'm not sure if you're a handsome guy, but the thickness of your skin and the weight of your body should be the best in the world. Fatty, what are you doing? Surprisingly, Solitary Eagle wasn't angry at all. On one hand, he had been angered by June Dashao too much, so he didn't need to do anything. On the other hand, every part of this fatty's body was round and round, which piqued Solitary Eagle's interest. Kid, how heavy are you? Are you at least 250 kilograms? Tang Yuan continued to jog, and with great momentum, he rolled his eyes at Solitary Eagle's question. Get lost, this young master is trying to lose weight. Don't ask questions that will dampen this young master's enthusiasm. Tang Yuan naturally didn't know who this old man was. If he were to know that the old man he was cursing was one of the 8 great masters who stood at the pinnacle of the world. Moreover, he was one of the few vicious and merciless people among them. It was estimated that Fatty's weight loss would be over in a short period of time. He would be so frightened that he would lose several kilograms of cold sweat at that moment. Kid, what a poisonous mouth you have. When this old man is done with his business, I'll help you lose weight. I'll definitely make you slimmer. Solitary Eagle said with some good intentions. Tang Yuan rolled his eyes at the old man's words and ignored him. Was it that easy to lose weight? I've tried everything, but I don't have any that really works. Hey, what's your name? You're still in the mood to chat with a half-dead man? June Moxie's impatient voice came from inside. Solitary Eagle. No wonder you're one of the 8 great masters. You can keep your cool. You're amazing. Solitary Eagle bellowed, damn it. I'm not an idiot. He disappeared from Tang Yuan's sight with a whoosh. Who? Boss June was talking about? Solitary Eagle? Solitary Eagle, one of the 8 great masters. It was as if a thunderclap had exploded on top of Fatty Tang's head. Tang Yuan stood there like a wooden chicken for a moment before his eyes rolled back into his head and he fell to the ground with a thump. He gasped for breath as sweat poured out of his head, body, arms, stomach, and buttocks like a fountain. The ground was soaked in sweat and it flowed like a small river. I pointed at the 8 great masters and scolded them. At the thought of it, Fatty Tang felt like the world was spinning around him. He collapsed to the ground and couldn't get up no matter what. After directly refusing the Solitary Eagle's request to watch from the side, June Dashao left Solitary Eagle outside and carried Hai Chen Feng into the newly built secret room. Although it was called a secret room, it was actually another room built behind June Moxie's bedroom. After the advancement of the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune, the treatment of Hai Chen Feng's injuries had become much easier. Moreover, Hai Chen Feng's injuries were internal, and the Hongjun Pagoda was a specialist in this field. Therefore, the treatment of his injuries was much easier. Hai Chen Feng was able to speak within a quarter of an hour. Can you really do it? What you promised me before? That my enemy is one of the 8 great masters. Hai Chen Feng asked. What do you think? Can't you see it? June Moxie replied. At least there's hope. I've seen your master's methods with my own eyes. He's really remarkable. I may not trust June Sun Shao, but I will never doubt your master. So what do you plan to do now? I've decided to stay. Hai Chen Feng said. I really have nowhere to go anyway. My original intention in traveling around the continent was to enhance my strength. If staying by your side is more useful than traveling around the continent, then why would I bother running around? Staying by my side isn't as simple as just staying. Do you understand this? June Moxie said in a heavy tone. Of course. A resolute look appeared on Hai Chen Feng's face. Now that I've decided to follow you, how can I not know what I should or shouldn't do? I've already made a promise to you, so I won't go back on my word. That's good. June Moxie continued to steadily input his spiritual qi into Hai Chen Feng's body. He said in a dull tone. I'm short on manpower right now. I understand. Hai Chen Feng felt the meridians in his body reconnect one by one. The vitality in his body was continuously returning. He felt that his condition was very good. I know a thing or two about the June family situation. That's good. June Moxie snorted twice. Hai Chen-feng, I want to control the entire underground forces of the capital. You'll have to start dealing with this after I've cured you. You'll have to do it even if you can't. No problem. Hai Chen-feng didn't even blink. The corners of his mouth slowly curled into a cruel arc. For a Sky Xian expert like him, his strength was probably a notch higher than Jun Wuyi's. With this kind of strength, dealing with the underground gangs of the capital would be as easy as killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. In fact, it wouldn't even be difficult for him to do so. You may have misunderstood. What I mean is that I only need information about this force. But I can't control it myself. You're the only one I need to control. June Moxie's face was gloomy. No matter what happens, you'll have to deal with it by yourself. Moreover, according to my information, the Morong family and the Li family are planning to take control of these gangs. These gangs also have their own subordinates. However, these people are very secretive, and their strength is definitely not weak. I believe that among these people, there are many who aren't weaker than you. June Moxie finished his explanation. No problem. Hai Chen-feng replied. Then, he pursed his lips and didn't say anything else. At the very least, he was confident that he would be the first to subdue the Jinyang gang. Once he had subdued the Jinyang gang, he would be able to use the Jinyang gang's name to conquer the entire Tianxiang city. After all, the Jinyang gang was the leader of the underground forces in the Tianxiang city. So, it was only natural for them to expand their influence. Hai Chen-feng didn't think that there was anything in this world that he and June Moxie couldn't accomplish. After all, the two of them had the backing of an aristocratic family, the Azure Master, the solitary god of the grasslands, and June Moxie's unfathomable master. In fact, this mysterious master was far more powerful than the great masters. What kind of power could be more powerful than this alliance? Hai Chen-feng was confident that his master, the Azure Master, would lend a helping hand if a fight broke out. The solitary eagle owed June Moxie and his master a big favor after today's matter. So, he certainly wouldn't sit idly by. Even if the situation was really urgent and out of control, it wouldn't matter. As long as June Moxie's master came forward, the world would be at peace. Therefore, Hai Chen-feng was very confident. I won't interfere with any of your actions and decisions. June Moxie closed his eyes. But you have to act with propriety. June Moxie emphasized the word propriety. Hai Chen-feng nodded deeply. Wait for my news. I'll inform you as soon as there's an opportunity to enhance your strength. My master is refining a pill that can enhance your Xian Qi cultivation. I've heard that the effect is very good. This is also the reason why I can guarantee that you'll be able to defeat a great master. June Moxie smiled deeply. You won't regret it if you follow me. June Moxie threw out his biggest bargaining chip. The so-called master was naturally the young Master June himself. Hai Chen-feng's eyes shone brightly as a look of extreme excitement appeared in his eyes. How could a pill refined by an expert who was practically at the pinnacle of the world be a mere common item? Hai Chen-feng couldn't help but sneer as he imagined the day when he would be able to suppress the solitary falcon and beat him up. The door of the secret room opened after an hour, and June Moxie walked out with an exhausted look on his face. Where's that kid? Solitary Eagle asked. June Moxie sighed and shook his head. He's dead. Solitary Eagle's heart sank, and his face suddenly became gloomy. The second day may be a little later. Ahem, I'm not afraid of everyone laughing at me. Today, I got the news of the interview on Upper Sanjiang. I'm so excited that I'm shaking all over, I'm trembling all over, foaming at the mouth, twitching all over. Fuck, if you want to laugh at me, laugh to your heart's content. I'm very intoxicated. Chapter 215. You're the one who's dead. June Moxie glared at him. This godly doctor has already taken action. How can anyone else decide whether he lives or dies? At this moment, Hai Chen-feng walked out of the secret room with a calm face. Solitary Eagle was about to refute June Moxie when he suddenly opened his eyes wide and opened his mouth. Just a moment ago, a person who was half dead and looked like he might die at any time was carried in. 2 hours later, he actually walked out alive and well. Even a godly doctor can't be that fast, right? This world is crazy. Did I just see a ghost today? Healed? Solitary Eagle rubbed his eyes. Completely healed? And your strength has been restored? Completely healed. Hai Chen-feng was still angry with Solitary Eagle, and replied with a calm face, "Thank you for your concern, Uncle Eagle. Chen-feng's strength has been restored with the help of this godly doctor. Then why are you still keeping a straight face? Why are you keeping a straight face? Fuck your master, can't you be a bit more respectful? Do you know how much I've endured in order to save you? You bastard!" Solitary Eagle's pent-up anger had finally erupted, and now that there was a suitable target in front of him, he couldn't wait to explode. Hai Chen-feng's calm face didn't even have time to reply when Solitary Eagle pounced on him, grabbed him, and brought him to the courtyard. His fists rained down like a torrential rain, and his legs rained down like a gale as he madly beat him. This scene of abuse happened to be right in front of Fatty Tang, who was paralyzed on the ground. Fatty's legs had just accumulated a bit of strength, but he was scared out of his wits. His body had just stopped sweating, but now he was sweating again. Tang Yuan's eyebrows twitched as he watched this scene, and the muscles on his face twitched in fright. "A long time passed, have you had enough?" June Moxie shouted. "I've had enough. I'm finally satisfied." The Solitary Eagle punched and kicked Hai Chen-feng a few more times before he finally stopped. Hai Chen-feng's entire body was covered in cuts and bruises. His face looked like a giant panda singing a Beijing opera. "If you're done, hurry up and send him out to do some work. This young master has a use for him." June Moxie replied snappily. "No matter what, Hai Chen-feng is still one of my people. You're beating him in front of me. How can I put my face in front of you?" Hai Chen-feng felt as if he had just been pardoned. He crawled up despite the pain in his body, and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. June Moxie turned to look at Solitary Eagle and was about to say something when suddenly, a sharp cry rang out, startling both of them. The little lowly Kuer carefully walked over with a cup of tea, but suddenly discovered something. "Young master, not good, not good." The little lowly panicked. "What happened?" "It's young Master Tang." "Young Master Tang, he fainted." Kuer pointed at young Master Tang in a panicked manner. She saw Tang Yuan lying limply on the ground. The fat on his body was no longer trembling. It turned out that he had already lost consciousness. What happened? June Moxie walked forward in bewilderment. No one did anything to him. How could he have fainted? June Moxie moved closer to take a pulse. The expression on his face suddenly became very interesting. He was tongue-tied as he looked around. What's going on? He sweated so much that he became dehydrated. This is very rare. Sweating so much that he became dehydrated. Tang Dashao was really talented. There was hope for him to lose weight this time. This was the first time that June Dashao had seen such a thing in his previous life. He didn't know if he was lucky or unlucky. Fatty's weight was measured the next day, and he had unexpectedly lost 5 pounds. Losing 5 pounds in one day was simply a miracle in the history of weight loss. The young Master June was flustered. He managed to get Tang Mo into the house with great difficulty. Fortunately, the young Master June had made a breakthrough a few days ago. Otherwise, the young Master June wouldn't have been able to move Tang Mo's weight and bulk. Fatty's weight and bulk were great. However, his courage wasn't that great. The great Master Eagle hadn't done anything to him, but he had already scared himself into a semi-conscious state. June Dashao knew that this guy wasn't actually in any danger. So, he pulled his mouth open and poured a few spoonfuls of cold water mixed with salt into it. He should have used ginseng soup to deal with Fatty's dehydration. However, he didn't have the time for that. In any case, the effect of salt water was the same. It was too nourishing for Fatty. After solving the problem of dehydration, Jun Dashao threw the dizzy fatty onto the bed. Then, he came out after making sure that he was all right. After all, the solitary eagle was still waiting there. He wanted to speak, but was too embarrassed to do so. It was very interesting. After all, he was one of the 8 great masters. It wouldn't be good to keep him waiting. Besides, a dignified great master was asking a young man for advice on martial arts. It was indeed a bit, this world is really crazy. Ha! Is there anything else? Jun Dashao asked knowingly. It was clear that he wanted to see how the solitary eagle would open his mouth to ask for advice from a junior. Today, I was fortunate enough to meet your master. Your master's cultivation is exquisite. He is truly a genius. This old man and I have talked for a long time. We appreciate each other's talents. We regret not having met earlier. We have become close friends. The solitary eagle smacked his lips. He thought for a long time. Then, he finally came up with an opening speech. It had to be said that this opening speech was quite in line with the solitary eagle's status. Of course, the premise was that Jun Dashao wasn't the young Master Jun. So, he didn't understand the whole story. Oh? Jun Dashao's belly almost burst from laughing. But, his face was full of curiosity. It seemed as if he was saying, so that's how it is. The solitary eagle's spirit was roused. He said, we had a very pleasant conversation. Then, your master talked about you as a disciple. Your master was very helpless. He said that he had passed on the flying eagle technique to you. But, you were very talented. But, you were lazy by nature. So, you couldn't understand the inner workings of the technique. Today, he coincidentally met me. As everyone knows, I am the person who has studied the soaring eagle art the most in the world. Therefore, he asked me to come here and give you some pointers. The more the solitary eagle spoke, the more it seemed as if he was speaking the truth. In fact, he was almost convinced that he was telling the truth. This old man is also very busy. But, it's hard to find a close friend in life. So, I have no choice but to reluctantly help him teach his disciple. Jun Dashao hung his head down. It seemed as if he was listening attentively. But, he was pinching his nose with one hand. He was trying to regulate his breathing. His other hand was covering his stomach. He was taking deep breaths. He was on the verge of suffering from internal injuries. The solitary eagle spoke in a dignified manner. Then, he waved his hand. Then, he said in a careless tone, you go out now. Practice the flying eagle technique that your master passed on to you. This old man wants to see where you've gone wrong. The sooner this old man is done, the sooner I can return to the prairie. I've already stayed here for a long time. And, I've already delayed many important matters. Ah! That old eagle, where did you make a mistake? Jun Moxie opened his eyes wide. He said in surprise, just last month, my master told me that my flying eagle technique, spirit eagle movement technique, sword art, saber art, palm art, fist art, and claw art have all reached a high level. He has nothing else to teach me. Why did he ask you to come here? Moreover, although I'm not talented, I've always been diligent. How could I be lazy? Back then, my master also saw this in me. That's why he accepted me as his disciple. Did he really tell you that? The solitary eagle was speechless. He didn't know what was going on. Suddenly, he glared at him and said, your master was probably being humble. I misunderstood. But, you should know that you can learn from others. In this aspect, I'm the professional. Don't you admit this? Jun Moxie looked embarrassed, but, my master told me that I don't need to practice the flying eagle technique anymore. If I practice it again, it will only slow down my progress. He even gave me a new technique. I've only just learned it. From your words, it seems like you have a lot of things to do. How about this, old eagle, you go back first. There's no need to trouble yourself. My master never tests my techniques. I'll just say that you've already given me pointers. How about this? I'll be relaxed. You'll also be able to save energy. It'll be convenient for everyone. The solitary eagle opened his eyes wide and didn't say anything for a long time. A supreme martial artist wanted to give pointers to someone, but was actually rejected. What kind of world is this? Is there any justice in this world? The solitary eagle suddenly felt that the world had been turned upside down. He thought back to when he was young. In order to receive pointers from an Earth Xian expert, he had waited for a long time. In the end, that person had said a few words as if he was giving out alms. Then, he felt as if he had received a treasure. Even when he was eating and walking, he would ponder over the profound mysteries within his heart. As for finding a supreme martial artist to give him pointers, he would laugh even in his dreams. What's wrong with this world? Could it be that the current trend is for a master to beg his disciple to learn from him? Ahem, actually it's like this. The solitary eagle had no other choice but to speak the truth. He was afraid that he would be even more humiliated if he continued to insist. So that's how it is. Why didn't you say so earlier? Jun Moxie nodded his head in understanding. He laughed in his heart. Do you think it's that easy to take advantage of me? Then we'll talk about it when I have time. Aren't you very busy? Jun Dashao had a look of consideration for the solitary eagle. I'm free right now. What I've said before is just a small matter. Should we start now? The supreme eagle's spirit was roused. I'm saying wait for me when I have time. I'm really tired right now. Jun Moxie said, moreover, since you're close friends with that old man, why doesn't he teach you himself? Why does he need me to do it for him? He's obviously trying to be lazy. He's squeezing my labor. If I teach him well, he'll owe me a favor. If I fail, I'll have to take the blame. This kind of thing, not to mention using me to work for him, there's no benefit at all. That old man is really treacherous. Humph, I won't do it. The solitary eagle was really dumbfounded this time. He didn't expect that not only could this kid not be deceived, but he was also unmoved by force or persuasion. What should he do now? I understand your difficulties, and I also understand your feelings. Young Master Jun was very understanding, but also very troubled as he said, but you should also be able to see that my temperament is that I don't get up early if there are no benefits. I never do things that are not beneficial. What benefits do you want, kid? Just say it. The solitary eagle was really gritting his teeth this time. Today, he was about to go crazy because of this kid. But then, the solitary eagle's eyes widened. His eyes almost went blank. Because at this moment Jun Mo Xie's right hand suddenly made a movement. It seemed very simple, but it wasn't simple at all. He raised his 5 fingers, and bent them like an eagle's claw. Then, he flew high in the air, and changed them again and again. His wrist and fingers were constantly changing, and every time they bent and changed, it would increase the power of his claw. But the most bizarre thing was that above the elbow, it didn't move at all. Shadowless and formless, myriad shadows and myriad forms. Even with the wide experience and high knowledge of solitary eagle, he had never seen such an ingenious move. But with his excellent eyesight, how could he not see the power of this move and the profoundness of it? If he could completely master it, just the power of this move alone would be considered as the top martial art of the present age. Just this move alone would make his trip today worthwhile. This is one of the 9 forms of ghostly eagle. Jun Moxie laughed. Is it passable? Of course it's passable. 9 forms of ghostly eagle. This move really lives up to its name, unpredictable and brilliant. The solitary falcon's eyes shone brightly as he gradually digested this technique in his mind. The more he pondered over it, the more he found it to be boundless, and the more profound it became. He couldn't help but feel an unbearable itch in his heart, and once again asked, "What kind of benefits do you want? Just say it." This was the same question as before, but the tone was like heaven and earth. The previous sentence was already very impatient, but the current sentence carried a lot of urgency. It was even a little bit more like he was ready to be taken advantage of. I don't want any benefits from you. Instead, I want to give you benefits. Jun Dashao smiled like a little fox. I can help you perfect the move, and I can also help you perfect your martial art. But you have to owe me a favor. Pay attention, you owe me, not my master. These are two completely different things. I already owe your master, and now I have to owe you too. One thing, and I owe you two favors. Solitary Eagle's forehead was full of black lines, and he snorted. But then he thought that it would be worth it even if he owed a favor if he could obtain this divine skill. In addition, you are also a great expert in this field. You should know that the study of moves, especially such a profound consummate skill, cannot be done in a day. Therefore, you will need to stay in Tianxiang City for a long period of time. We will discuss this in detail, study it slowly, explore it carefully, and calculate it bit by bit. Young Master Jun raised his index finger and said, "Stop." The solitary eagle felt a headache coming on. The first half is reasonable, but the second half is full of fog. What are you trying to say, kid? Just say it. Don't beat around the bush. Let me worship you for a year, okay? Jun Dashao smiled innocently and said, "My request is not high, and for this year, whether it is food, lodging, or wine, I will take care of it all." Jun Dashao moved forward and said, "This wine will be even better than the wine from that day. It will definitely satisfy you, you can drink it for free for a year. What do you think? In fact, even if you go to the Spirit Fog Lake to have fun, I'll pay for it. Let's talk about it, ha ha ha." The young Master Jun's smile was so wide that his eyes couldn't even be seen. Where would you find such good conditions in the world? Chapter 216. Solitary Eagle was so angry that he didn't speak for a long time. After a long time, he gritted his teeth and asked with an ominous glint in his eyes, "You mean, you want this old man to be your hired thug for a year? Dream on. Are you having a nightmare? You little bastard, you really dare to say anything? Ah. No no no, definitely not hired thug, you misunderstood me." Jun Moxie shook his head, "You only need to live here, you don't need to do anything, only have one request." "What request? Speak quickly." Solitary Eagle's chest heaved up and down, he really couldn't resist the urge to spank this kid's butt into 8 pieces. If the Jun family encounters some major danger, for example, the danger of extermination. Jun Moxie's expression became serious. "I hope you can guarantee that after a year, the Jun family will still exist in this world. That's all. This kind of danger, right now, may not happen for a year, or it may happen several times a year, I don't know, but only for a year. You need time to practice and understand the eagle form, and you also need a place. You also need an opponent. You also need the necessary resources." Jun Moxie's expression became serious. "I can provide all of these for you, I just want to use your name to guarantee the safety of the Jun family for a year, that's all." Solitary Eagle restrained the anger on his face and frowned in contemplation. "As long as you agree, you will be a guest of the Jun family for a year, your position in the Jun family will even surpass that of my grandfather. No one, including me, can order you around. You can do whatever you want. You can just walk away if there's no crisis after a year. My Jun family owes you a lot. A great favor." Jun Moxie continued to speak glibly, "Moreover, my master will come often during this year." This last sentence was the most important bargaining chip for Solitary Eagle. Regardless of the time, location, or the necessities of the opponent's daily life, it was not a difficult task. However, that kind of matchless expert was something that could only be found by chance. To be able to encounter such a thing once in one's life was already a great fortune. "All right." Solitary Eagle's sharp eyes looked at Jun Moxie. "I promise you." "Awesome." Jun Moxie smiled and said, for the official success of our negotiation, how about we go to the Spirit Fog Lake tonight? Get lost! With a bang, young Master June danced and danced in the air like a trapeze artist. Since the beginning, June Moxie had been planning this step. Ever since he discovered Solitary Eagle's mistake in front of the maple forest, June Moxie felt that a huge pie was about to fall on his head. Although he had successfully tricked the two Xian Beast Kings to cause trouble for the Shuihun Manor, but the Shuihun Manor was too powerful, and its background was unknown. Taking a step back, even if Li Ju Tian's son was crippled, or even beaten to death, but the matter of marriage was something that could only be done with the spirit tablet. Therefore, June Imo Xie had no choice but to be on guard. Another point was that even if the trouble with the Shuihun Manor was resolved, the three Shenxian masters of the Silver Blizzard City had already arrived at the Tianxiang city. Xiao Han and Jun Wui were rivals in love, so how could they let go of such a good opportunity? They would inevitably provoke the relationship between the magnificent Jewel Hall and the Jun family. Even if they could not destroy the Jun family, they would still humiliate them. His grandfather was an important minister of the country, and he was not young anymore. If he were to be humiliated, how could he bear it? Jun Imo Xie had already considered this step from his own point of view. In fact, he was most worried about the Silver Blizzard City, and not the Shuihun Manor. After all, the Silver Blizzard City was only a few feet away from the Jun family, and the Jun family did not have the ability to deal with the Shenxian masters. Therefore, he must first think of a way to deal with them, so that he would not be overwhelmed when the time came. Jun Imo Xie's original intention was to use his identity as Jun Imo Xie's master to cure Haichen Feng, and then show him a few moves in front of the solitary falcon in order to arouse his curiosity. It must be said that the identity of Jun Imo Xie was much more important in front of the solitary eagle than in front of June Moxie. But the plans of man are always inferior to the plans of the heavens. At that critical juncture, Jun Imo Xie had to make a breakthrough, and had no choice but to settle for the next best thing. When he escaped into the ground, he had already simulated everything that had happened so far in his mind. He believed that he still had a high chance of success. Right now, Jun Imo Xie's objective had basically been achieved. Moreover, the solitary falcon is at home, and he'll be able to collect the necessary herbs for the old man's cultivation. Will the solitary falcon really sit back and watch? At that time, wouldn't the old master's supreme protectors be present? Therefore, Jun Moxie had already planned to eliminate all the hidden dangers in one fell swoop the moment he saw the Battle of the Maple Forest. And it turned out that his plan was completely feasible. Moreover, it had been a complete success. From this moment on, the crisis of the Jun family had been completely resolved by Jun Moxie. And the coming year would be the year of rapid development for the Jun family. And this was the ultimate goal of Jun Moxie's meticulous planning ever since he had obtained the Xian Dan. Now, he could finally put down the boulder in his heart. Jun Moxie had finally achieved his goal after exhausting all his schemes and means. However, the atmosphere in the magnificent Jewel Hall was gloomy and gloomy. What's going on? The three great elders, Mu Shuitong, and Xiao Han were sitting together in a circle, discussing some relevant matters. With the presence of the three great elders, Mu Shuitong and Xiao Han obviously didn't dare to act rashly, and appeared to be very well behaved, especially Xiao Han. Don't be fooled by his domineering appearance in front of the three great elders. He was even more overbearing than a dog with a bald tail, but in front of the three great elders, he was more obedient than the most obedient of children. These 5 people held the highest positions in the Silver Blizzard City and the magnificent Jewel Hall. Ordinary people were not qualified to sit with them. At this moment, they saw the little princess carrying Xiao Fengwu in her arms. Even the weakest among the 5 was at the Tianxian realm. With just a glance, they could tell that Xiao Fengwu's injuries were not light and his life was in danger. How could they not be alarmed? They were naturally aware that the little princess had urged Xiao Fengwu to sneak out to play. However, since the Xian Dan had been settled, the experts from all over the Tianxiang city no longer had any intention of staying and had left. The Tianxiang city had returned to its former tranquility. Therefore, they were happy to let the two little guys go out for a stroll so that they wouldn't have a headache listening to their stories. Moreover, the Tianxiang city had been restored to its former state. The two of them were gold xian experts and could be considered as the top experts of the Tianxiang city. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have suffered any losses. Therefore, they turned a blind eye and pretended that they didn't know what was going on. Xiao Han was even more happy to see his nephew and the little princess get closer to each other. However, Xiao Fengwu hadn't expected that he would come back in such a distressed manner. Xiao Fengwu had been brutally beaten by someone, and had sustained serious injuries. His clothes were ragged, and his lower body was covered by a few rags. In fact, he would have been completely naked if he hadn't been covered by a few rags. Young Master Xiao could be considered as a member of the Silver Blizzard City's upper class. So, he had the protection of the snow silkworm armor. So, what kind of hatred could have enraged him to the point that he was stripped of his undergarments? Han Yan-meng felt as if she had seen her loved ones when she saw these 5 people. She threw herself into the arms of the third elder, stamped her feet, and burst into tears. This delicate little girl had lived a smooth life. She had never experienced any adversity. However, she had been scared out of her wits today. The third elder gently patted her back and comforted her in a soft voice. However, his eyes were blazing with anger. Who has the guts to bully the little princess of the Silver Blizzard City? Even the old master of the Snow Wind City, Han Fengshui, was afraid that this little granddaughter of his would melt in his mouth, and was afraid that she would fall out of his hands. Who would have thought that this is the first time I've come to the Tianxiang city? Then, they saw the clear handprint on the little princess's face. She was now weeping and weeping like a pear blossom in the rain. The 3 elders were heartbroken, and their anger couldn't be any greater. The 5 of them frowned as they examined Xiao Fengwu's injuries. That was a physical attack. His strength was concentrated, and his technique was quick. This should be a physical expert. I haven't seen a physical expert of this level in a long time. The 9th elder frowned and said as he transferred his Xian Qi into Xiao Fengwu's body to heal his injuries. The other 4 also revealed an astonished look. Only the little princess was still sobbing. Her eyes were blurred with tears, but she didn't understand the meaning of these words. So, she asked while sobbing, what is a physical attack? It's an attack that doesn't use Xian Qi. It's a technique that uses pure physical strength. The third elder carefully examined Xiao Fengwu's injuries. Then, he said with a heavy expression, look at this injury. Fengwu would have been dead even if he had 9 lives if that person had used Xian Qi. From this, it can be seen that even though this person is vicious, he still has a sense of propriety. The 5 of them frowned at the same time. There was only one possibility that someone could beat Xiao Fengwu to such a state without using Xian Qi. This person's martial arts were far above Xiao Fengwu's, and their strength was at least at the level of Yu Xian or an Earth Xian. Although Yu Xian and an Earth Xian expert couldn't enter their eyes, but this person had the guts to strip Xiao Fengwu of the Silver Blizzard City's snow silkworm armor. This was enough to prove that this person wasn't simple. However, this enmity must be avenged no matter what. Little princess, don't worry. Calm your breathing, and slowly tell me what happened. Mu Shuetong said. It's too embarrassing. I'm too embarrassed to say it. Sigh. I steamed a pot of rice this morning, but when I lifted the lid, I was blown away by the steam, and my elbows got blisters. It's really shameful. But don't worry, it won't affect my writing. Hee. Today's second update is a bit late. Around 22:00 o'clock.